Good evening, everyone. We'd like to welcome you to the City of Palatka, March 25th, 2021 City Commission meeting. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. At this time, we're going to have our Pledge of Allegiance, as well as our invocation by our chaplain, Pastor Alonzo Mulberry. If you would come forward at this time. Would everyone please stand?
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father, we thank you once again for the opportunity to come together. We pray that you would bless our gathering as we come to do the business of the city. We ask for your wisdom and your guidance, your directions, and all that we undergird to do. Let your name be praised among us in this place. And we'll forever give you glory and honor in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Chaplain. Roll call, please.
Mayor Hill.
Here.
Commissioner McCaskill.
Here.
Commissioner Campbell.
Present.
Commissioner Jones.
Present.
Commissioner Bourne.
Present.
President accounted for.
And we have a quorum. Let's move forward at this time with approval of minutes from the March 11th meeting.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor and a second by Commissioner McCaskill. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Next up, it's Palatka Police Department's recognitions. We've got under item 3, public recognition and presentations. First up is PPD recognition of Officer Austin Norcross, Officer Thomas, Officer Cameron Wall, and Lieutenant Ashton Cassidy for their quarterly awards and nominations, as well as other introductions. Chief Shaw.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. Today, as I spoke to you on our last meeting, I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce our new officers to the Palatka Police Department, as well as to honor our first quarter award winners. If you would, gentlemen, if you guys will line up across the back.
We just reached our capacity from the CDC. I feel safer.
Some of these individuals have been on department just coming up on a year, and then others have just joined us and are in training, but we wanted to be able to take this opportunity as we began to replace and introduce them to the commission. As I call your name, if you're present, please step forward. Blaine Snyder, Anthony Solis, Curtis Williams, Matthew Buchanan, Tommy Robinson, Eric Plyman, Douglas Threadford, and not present with us here today as far as our new officers is Cameron Wall, Austin Norcross, and our minority recruit, which is Travis Crumpton. Also with us today, I have a couple individuals that I'd like to honor for our first quarter awards. You all had the opportunity to hear about one of them in our last meeting. And I'm just gonna start from the top. Captain Newcomb, would you please come up and help me out, please? Our first individual I'd like to go over, and I know he has someplace to be, so I'll call him out for this reason. I received a letter from a young lady who was just passing through. The letter read, Chief Shaw, I wanted to let you know how thankful we are for Lieutenant Cassidy's assistance. We were in your town for our son's wedding held at Coventry Oaks. We were unfortunately involved in a theft where wedding cards from our housekeeper at the hotel was stolen. My son, Brock Belcher, contacted your department and Lieutenant Cassidy assisted him. We thought for sure he would just say, you can file a report and go on about his business. He immediately contacted hotel security, viewed security footage, found what appeared to be the housekeepers on video. He actually found some of the missing cards ripped up in the trash can. He kept our son updated with his progress. We did end up getting reimbursed by the hotel. We greatly appreciate Lieutenant Cassidy and all he did. Lieutenant Cassidy not only has to run his district for Alpha District, but he also, from time to time, works days and nights managing that district. For him to actually take a call and work the entire call himself is honorable. It goes above and beyond what we asked for from the police department. And for this first quarter award, we want to appreciate him with a certificate. The certificate reads, for your high quality of service and above and beyond approach to the Belcher family, you are an asset to the Palatka Police Department and the community. Lieutenant Ashton Cassidy. Thank you. I thought you was helping. Our next individual you got to hear about in our last meeting from Mr. Wayne McLean. Mr. McLean read a letter involving a case from the Beck Automotive Group where Mr. Johnson went above and beyond by executing his duties as an officer and making sure that not only the perpetrator was apprehended, but he was also, that Beck was also returned, the property was returned. And for his outstanding work, we wanted to honor Mr. Johnson. The Beck Automotive Group commends you on your diligence and persistence in recovering valuable parts stolen from their site. Your professionalism and thoroughness in solving the case is extremely appreciated. Your continuous high quality of service is an asset to the Palatka Police Department and the community. Mr. Johnson, we thank you. Our next two award winners are not here, but I do want to take time. Oh, I'm sorry, Cameron, you arrived. Thank you. Cameron Wall, who we missed earlier. Mr. Wall was involved in a narcotics case where his keen eye and persistence and his investigative intellect landed a trafficking amount or a large amount of narcotics and guns. He removed 2 guns, an assault rifle, and a large amount of marijuana off the street. Mr. Wall, for your investigative efforts, your hard work on the night shift, your continuous high quality of service is an asset to the Palatka Police Department and the community. For that, we thank you, Cameron Wall. Our last individual, make sure he didn't come in late, is Mr. Norcross. Mr. Norcross is not here because he actually had an incident last night where he had to go to the hospital, so he was unable to join us today. But Mr. Norcross had 2 cases. One was a drug case where he had a trafficking amount of prescription pills, of methamphetamine. And he also had a stolen vehicle. With the stolen vehicles were reported. It came across, and Norcross kept looking, and with his persistence was able to find the vehicle. He was also able to apprehend the subject before he got away. When officers arrived, they noticed that Mr. Norcross was placing the individual in handcuffs and in the car. Mr. Norcross has just completed training. Lieutenant Cassidy was about 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, so he is showing up to be a very good officer for our agency. His certificate reads, for your persistent search of a stolen vehicle and your controlled and quick apprehension of the car thief, you have been an asset to the Alpha team since your completion of FTO. Your hard work is a credit to the agency. And we want to say thank you to Austin Norcross. And that sums up our officers and our recognition. And thank you for the opportunity to introduce them to you today. and to be able to present these awards in front of you.
Again, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Welcome to the city of Palatka. And again, we just appreciate all that you do and the sacrifices that you make on a daily basis. Anything from the commission?
Yes, I like to just thank the guys for all that they do for the city of Palatka. And many times people don't realize that you guys are the ones that's running to danger as opposed to most people are running from danger. So we certainly appreciate everything you've done, your sacrifices that you've made, and we look forward to continue that level of service in our city. And we hope to have you guys here for some time. So thank you and welcome aboard.
Mayor, I have something to say. First, I want to apologize for not being in attendance tonight, but I do want to say I've had the opportunity to meet a few of you guys prior to this evening. However, I want to welcome each of you that are new to the family. We know that you guys often face what we fear, and overall, you have a tough job. And it seems these days it's a bit more tougher. However, there may be that you're going to come upon a time in your career you may want to choose a different career path, but we want you all to remember, because of your hard work and determination, the community is able to rest well at night. So with that being said, we just want to thank you guys for all you do. And again, welcome aboard.
Commissioner Jones here. I would like to say welcome aboard to the city of Palatka. Thank you guys for serving, and Cassidy, Lieutenant Cassidy, thank you for the tremendous work you've done. I want you guys to actually stay here in Palatka because we've been known as a training ground, but we would like to keep you guys here long term, make this a career move, not just a job. Thank you guys.
I too wish to thank you all for your commitment to helping make this community better. I look forward to working with you. I look forward to seeing the great works that you will continue to do for this community, and the relationships that you will build with the citizens of this community to let them know that you are here for them and not against them. So again, we thank you for your commitment. Thank you for your dedication, and welcome to the city of Palatka.
Give them another round of applause. Moving the agenda forward at this time, we're moving to our Student of the Month for 2021, March of 2021. I'll entertain a motion to cancel Student of the Month. Just kidding. We're gonna have our Student of the Month. At this time, we wanna make sure, as always, that we take time out to first and foremost give thanks to all of our teachers and our educators who are assembled throughout this room and throughout our Zoom land. And we just want to thank you for the sacrifices and the commitments that you've made to our young people, particularly during this difficult time. And so we'd just like to say thank you to them and for all that they've invested into our students. And let's give them a round of applause. And next, we want to say thank you to our extended family members and parents and everyone who's taken the opportunity to truly help raise these kids, because it takes a village to raise a child. And we want to just thank everyone who's had their input into these children's lives, who've sowed seeds into them, and for them to be as successful as they are at this point. And so again, we want to thank the families of our students for all the work that they've done as well. Let's give them a round. And now to our honorees. We will start our presentation for Student of the Month for March 2021. Commissioner Jones, Commissioner Bohr, name is always typed in there. So Commissioner Jones, I'll let you lead us off with some words for this month.
From Brown Pierce Elementary School, Elijah Sarah.
From CL Overturf Junior 6th grade center, Lily Parkhurst. Children's Reading Center Charter School, Hadley Griffith. Looks like Jonathan Griffith. She is a lot prettier than Jonathan. Next up, E.H. Miller School, Angel Giovanni Servin Quiones. James A. Long Elementary School, Caden Heckman. From Jenkins Middle School, Kamaya Miles. From Kelly Smith Elementary School, Carly Brinker. From Mellon Elementary School, Kamaria Jackson. From Mosley Elementary School, Atilia Dean. From Palatka High School, Tia Starks. From Penal Baptist Academy, Paisley Brothers. From Putnam Academy of Arts and Sciences, Keith Williams. From Putnam Edge High School, Devon Jones. This concludes our Student of the Month for March 2021. Any words of wisdom from you, Commissioner Jones?
Yes, I would like to say congratulations, and I would like to say this to each and every one of the students that were awarded today. You are strong, you are special, you are awesome, you are tough, you are loved, you are not alone, you are supported, you are worth it, you are amazing, you are brave, you are encouraged, and you are a fighter, and you are a future leader. Thank you.
So again, great words, Commissioner. And I'd like to leave you guys with something that we've been saying for 40 years now. Miss Green had us say it back in the 3rd grade at Mosley Elementary School. And we started every day out by simply saying, I am somebody. If my mind can conceive it and my heart can believe it, I know I can achieve it because I am somebody. You guys are somebody special. You're destined for greatness. We're so proud of you. And we are looking forward to you being the leaders of tomorrow in this community. So just keep up the good work and continue to do great things. And again, congratulations for being Student of the Month. Next up are our proclamations. Ms. Krantz, first up, we have our March of Dimes fundraising days, April 8th through June 8th, 2021. Ms. Ashley Merritt, are you here?
I am. Thank you all so much for having me.
Yes, ma'am. It's a pleasure to have you here. The proclamation reads as follows.
Whereas 1 in 33 babies are born in the United States with a birth defect, resulting in billions of dollars of costs for care and accounting for 20% of all infant deaths. The March of Dimes, a voluntary health organization, began in 1938 when radio announcer and comedian Eddie Cantor urged his listeners to send their spare dimes to the White House to contribute to a fund for finding a cure for polio. Is working to assure healthy lives for America's babies. And whereas 2021 marks the 83rd year, the March of Dimes has been safeguarding America's infant health and has been a pioneer in preventing birth defects, the nation's #1 health problem, through programs of research, community services, education, advocacy, prenatal care. And whereas the March of Dimes Rally to Raise will be virtual from April 8th, 2021 to June 8th, 2021, with a virtual march on June 12th, 2021. And whereas the nation's hope for assuring future generations a healthy start in life depends upon the efforts and commitment of all Americans to participate in socially distanced fundraising events. The March for Babies, formerly known as Walk America, has been successful for more than 50 years, raising more than $2.4 billion for the March of Dimes mission to improve the health of babies by preventing birth defects and infant mortality. Now, therefore, I, Terrell L. Hill, Mayor of the City of Palatka, together with the members of the Palatka City Commission, do hereby proclaim April the 8th to June 8th, 2021 as March of Dimes fundraising days in the City of Palatka, and urge all citizens of our community to support the important efforts of the March of Dimes in helping to give babies a healthier start in life by participating in and contributing to various March for Babies team fundraisers. In witness whereas I have hereunto set my hand and cause to be affixed this official seal of the City of Palatka this 25th day of March in the year of our Lord 2021.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor and a second by Commissioner McCaskill. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Let's give a round of applause for March of Dimes. Ms. Merritt.
I hope you see the word thank you loud and clear on my screen right now, because it comes to you with a huge and very sincere heart. This year has been beyond challenging for everybody, and the community of Palatka stepped up in a truly incredible way in 2020 to support moms and babies. I don't know if you realize it, but in the 22 minutes that we've been on the call together, 22 infants have been born in the United States, either preterm or with a birth defect. And you all have contributed hugely towards making their start in life so much better. This is a very brief snapshot of the impact that the community of Palatka has helped us make as an organization in 2020. But I do specifically want to address the NICU Family Support Program at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. Through your efforts, we are able to fund a NICU family support program at Shands Hospital in Gainesville that supports families that are going through this journey through what has been a truly challenging time for all of us, but especially when you're bringing new life into the world. So thank you for making that difference in your community. In addition to that, we were able to step up and make a difference in an even more meaningful way for both healthcare providers and families because of the impact of COVID-19. You'll see a snapshot of that on the screen as well. This wouldn't have been possible without the residents of Palatka and the tremendous support you have made as volunteers, advocates, and fundraisers. We are so very grateful. We hope you'll join us this year in March for Babies, a Mother of a Movement. You can register at marchforbabies.org or consider making a donation either online or through the campaign at your local public store, which will be taking place from April 15th through the 26th, where you can get involved. Again, I want to be sensitive to the many other areas of business that you have on the agenda, and I will share this slide deck after tonight's meeting. But again, thank you for helping in the fight for the health of every mom and baby and giving them the best start possible. We're so grateful.
Again, thank you very much for all that you do. Let's give them a round of applause. March. Next up is Child Abuse Prevention Month. We've got Ms. Cotter and et al. And CDS Behavior. Proclamation reads as follows.
Whereas Florida's future depends on nurturing the healthy development of over 4 million children in our state. And whereas the abuse and neglect of children can cause severe, costly, and lifelong problems. And whereas every child has the right to be safe, physically and mentally healthy, and educationally and developmentally on track. And whereas research shows that parents and caregivers who have support systems and know how to seek help in times of trouble are more resilient and better able to provide safe environments and nurturing experiences for their children. And whereas individuals, businesses, schools, and faith-based and community organizations must make children a top priority and take action to support the physical, social, emotional, and educational development and competency of all children. And whereas during the month of April, in collaboration with the Governor's Office of Adoption and Child Protection, the Department of Children and Families, and the Ounce of Prevention Fund of Florida, the City of Palatka will support Pinwheels for Prevention, the statewide campaign promoting awareness of child abuse efforts by encouraging healthy child development, positive parenting practices, and community support. Now, therefore, I, Terrell L. Hill, Mayor of the City of Palatka, on behalf of the Palatka City Commission, hereby proclaim April 2021 as Child Prevention Month in the City of Palatka.
and urge all who hear or read this proclamation to engage in activities whose purpose is to strengthen families and communities and provide the optimal environment for healthy child development. In witness whereof, I hereunto set my hand and cause to be affixed the official seal of the city of Palatka, Florida, this 25th day of March, in the year of our Lord, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Motion on the floor to second. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Let's give a round of applause. Ms. Cotter, are you doing the honors for us? Ladies, you can stand here if you want to while she's going there. You can join.
Well, I'd actually like for them to introduce themselves as well. I'm Nicole Heiss with the Children's Advocacy Center.
I'm Jacqueline Weber, the Program Administrator for the Department of Children and Families.
Cindy Starling, CDS Family and Behavioral Health Services Regional Director.
And I'd again like to thank the City of Palatka because you've always supported the child abuse prevention. You know, with this being Child Abuse Prevention Month, it is really a great time to celebrate the good things that our community does to promote healthy child development. Thank you. Support families and to help prevent child abuse and neglect. And of course, due to COVID, we all know that large gatherings and events are discouraged. So we had to be a little more creative this year. So during the pandemic, the iconic blue pinwheels still play a prominent role. We still have some places that are putting the pinwheels out. And we are asking that any organization that can to, light up blue for us for the month of April. Right now, the courthouse is going to be lit blue for the month of April, which is awesome. Some of the what we are doing, since we can't hold a large event, this year what we're doing is a food drop at Palatka High School. We're gonna all get there about 7:30, get things set up, and from 10 to 12, we'll be doing a food drop for the community for prevention, for child abuse prevention. The other thing, of course, we're urging everyone to wear blue on April 1st to signify, because blue is child abuse prevention color. And again, I thank the town of Palatka. You have always supported us, City of Palatka, excuse me, have always supported us, and you've always been really awesome. And so if anyone else can light up blue, please do.
What's the date of your food drop?
The date, I'm sorry, it's April 10th. It's a Saturday morning, and it's at Palatka High School.
And so always great. It's always a great event. Every year, we're just sorry that COVID won't allow it to be in the same manner that it's always been. This commission has always had fun coming out, as well as being very informed about many of the things that are out there. I think that we just commend you for the work that you do as it relates to specifically dealing with healing families and also protecting our children who've been abused, abandoned, or neglected. And so we just thank you all for the commitment and the sacrifice to our children.
Thank you. Each car also will, or each family that gets a box of food will also get a bag filled with prevention material so that they have an idea of the resources that are around and available to them.
If you can send us maybe the electronic version of your flyer, and then we'll make sure we share it on our social media sites as well. Sure. With our families. Any other comments from the commission?
I do have a question. And thank you all for what you're doing. And if anyone would like to donate any dried goods or food items, where will we drop that off? Will it be at the CDS family, children, department, or where?
Christy, is there a way for them to drop it off?
Hi, my name is Christy Gillis. I'm the Community Development Administrator with the Florida Department of Children and Families, Circuit 7. The food is actually being provided through Epicure. So they will be picking up the food, and there's going to be a truck that is bringing the items to the school there on that Saturday. So we're not doing the food drive itself. The food will already be provided, and it's conjunction with Epicure as well as with Flagler Care Connect.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for us?
No other questions. Give them a round of applause.
Would you mind terribly if I had Mr. McLean take a picture of us together?
Sure. Let's take this picture. You can stand behind yourself. Be taller than you. Still one more round. Next up is Safe Digging Month. Safe Digging Month, we got Mr. Brad Martin from Sunshine 811. If you can come forward. Call before you dig. Amen. Whereas each year, Florida's vital underground utility infrastructure is jeopardized by unintentional damage by those who fail to call 811 to have underground lines located prior to digging. Whereas undesired consequences such as utility services interruption, damage to the environment, personal injury, and even death are potential results of failing to locate underground lines before digging. And whereas undeserved consequences such as utility service interruption, and whereas Sunshine 811 and 1,000 members promote the national call before you dig number 811 in an effort to prevent their damages, and whereas designated by the Federal Communications Commission in 2005, 811 provides excavators and homeowners a simple toll-free number to call and request utility line locations as the intended dig site, at the intended dig site. Whereas through education on safe digging practices, excavators and homeowners can save time and money and prevent serious injury to themselves and others by calling 811 before beginning to dig. Waiting 2 full business days for location marks, verifying the utility responses, protecting the marks so they remain visible throughout the project, and finally digging with care around the marks. And whereas all parties agree that safe digging is a shared responsibility, now therefore I, Terrell Hill, Mayor of the City of Palatka, Florida, on behalf of the Palatka City Commission, hereby proclaim April 2021 as Safe Digging Month in the City of Palatka, and we urge all citizens and contractors to use call 811 call center to locate underground facilities before beginning excavation or demolition, in addition to all other appropriate safety precautions. And witness whereof here to set my hand and cause to be affixed the seal of the City of Palatka, Florida, on this 25th day of March in the year of our Lord 2021. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
There's a motion on the floor and a second. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Jones. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Let's give a round of applause. Call while you did. Call before you did.
Would just like to thank you, Mayor and Commissioners and community, for your continued support year after year for National Safe Digging Month. The entire nation actually took after Florida in proclaiming April. We started the whole process off. Sunshine 811 is the not-for-profit corporation, the call center of Call Before You Dig. So we appreciate the awareness opportunity to educate the communities, excavators and utilities and everyone, because it pertains for the safety of any excavation projects, the workers, and protection of Florida's infrastructure. So we certainly appreciate it and remind everyone, no matter how big or small, 811 is the number to call your project. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Next up, Water Conservation Month.
Whereas water is a basic and essential need of every living creature, clean, and sustainable. Water resources are vital to the Florida's environment, and economy, and quality of life. And whereas the St. Johns River Water Management District and the City of Palatka are working with the state of Florida and other management districts, local governments, and water supply utilities to increase awareness about the importance of water conservation. And whereas the City of Palatka and the state of Florida has designated April, typically a dry month, when water demands are most acute, as Florida's Water Conservation Month to educate citizens about how they can help save Florida's precious water resources. And whereas the City of Palatka has always encouraged and supported water conservation through various educational programs and special events, and joins St. Johns River Water Management District in encouraging and supporting water conservation through its water supply planning processes, cooperative funding programs, technical assistance, and regulatory programs. And whereas every business, industry, school, and citizen can make a difference when it comes to conserving water and protecting Florida's water resources. And whereas every business, industry, school, and citizen can make a difference when it comes to conserving water. Now, therefore, I, Terrell Hill, Mayor of the City of Palatka, together with the members of the Palatka City Commission, do hereby endorse and proclaim the month of April 2021 as Water Conservation Month in the City of Palatka. And I call upon each citizen and business to help protect our precious resource by practicing water-saving measures and becoming more aware of the need of water. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused to be affixed the official seal of the City of Palatka this 25th day of March, the year of our Lord, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor in a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Let's give a round of applause. With us today, we have Ms. Deirdre Irwin from St. Johns River Water Management District.
Hello, and thank you for inviting me to join you tonight. And thank you for yet again passing the resolution for Water Conservation Month. In my role as Water Conservation Coordinator for the district, I would like to thank you. And then also in my role as the co-chair of the Water Use Efficiency Division of the AWWA, we consider April to be a very important month to remind residents to cut down on their water use. This is often the time of the year when they start turning on sprinklers. And we just like to remind everyone that water conservation is probably the cheapest alternative water supply, and an excellent way that residents and businesses can cut down on their use and help the city with having adequate water supply. So again, thank you so much.
Again, thank you very much. And also thank you to St. Johns River Water Management District for being such a great partner of the city, with the City of Palatka, and then also an asset here. And so again, thank you very much for all the work that you do, as well as your agency, and for all the kindness of the board as well. And so again, we definitely want to say thank you to you, and we will definitely make sure that our citizens are truly engaged in Water Conservation Month.
Okay, thank you.
Let's give a round of applause. Next up is public comment. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. No action will be taken on topics of discussion. Anyone here wishing to speak during public comment, please fill out a yellow speaker's card for me, as well as those who are watching virtually. You can dial 386-329-0100 extension 0, or you can place your question in the YouTube chat function as well. At this time, we will open the floor for public comment. Is there anyone here for public comment at this time? I've got a couple cards here. And I'm going to call up first Mr. Brian Rand. Rao, I'm sorry, Brian Rao. Mr. Manager, so if you'll come forward at this time.
Mayor, commissioners, thank you all for having me tonight. Just wanted to propose an idea to the city of Palatka, and really to benefit the county. I've been the store manager of our local Lowe's for going on 1.5 years now. In fact, this summer marks 20 years for me in big box retail, but 16 years I spent with a prior organization before the last 3+ years I've been with Lowe's. And I must say that one of the things that I admire most about our company is its dedication and commitment to our communities, of which we are based upon. Enriching our communities obviously enriches our own business model, and enriches ourselves as individuals that work within the stores and service our community. So with that, one of the things that Lowe's has introduced this year that I wanted to bring to everybody's attention, this year is the 100th anniversary of Lowe's. And with that 100th anniversary, a way to celebrate and give back to the towns, to the communities, to the cities, to the states that have allowed our businesses to come in and operate. We are dedicating $10 million nationwide to do what we call the 100 Hometowns Project. It's 100 hometowns for 100 years. Each of these projects will be granted an amount of up to around $100,000 for remodel project. And those projects are to be used for beautification within the city limits. So one of the things, obviously, that's recommended is it for to be something of public access and something that can be of a fairly monumental value in regards to what the community can share and take pride in. And like I said, as opposed to what our typical resources look like, we usually get 2 grants a year in what we call the Lowe's Heroes Project. We've used it multiple times for local elementary schools here in the city of Palatka. We used it recently for the Palatka Waterworks. That's around $2,500 when we do projects like that from a beautification standpoint. We're looking here at upwards of around $100,000. Normally a store manager would not personally invest the time to propose these situations because it is for the community to actually apply for these, but I'm very passionate about the city of Palatka. I'm a graduate of Middleburg High School, but I grew up in Interlochen. I grew up in Palatka. I've got lots of friends and family that are in this area. So I'm one of the few lucky store managers that actually gets to manage a store in an area that I consider to be my hometown. So it's very critical and important to me. It's a personal mission of mine for us to be one of those 100 hometowns out of over 1,800 stores in the continental United States. So with that, also Wayne has joined me tonight, Mr. Wayne McLean, if he could come up. One of the things that we have as an idea is to revitalize an amphitheater space on the riverfront. We should have a PowerPoint for everybody to have a visibility to it.
Yes. So, Mr. Mayor, this is just one idea that we came up with. We've talked to Jonathan Griffin about it a little bit. And this, we're proposing this as kind of being a thought starter for the commission to look at. You want to go to the next slide? So this is some ideas of a revamping of the amphitheater that we've been researching. Most of them, as you can see, this one particularly has a canopy with lighting and sound. That kind of, you can see that's terraced up like ours is. You want to go to the next one? This is one that you see, they all seem to have a shell over them with sound equipment, lighting, and that type of thing. To the next one. Look back. This one I really like because it's really looks like it's on a river similar to ours, but you can see again the canopy and those types of things. So, and then the last one is just what I call a 10,000 foot view of maybe what ours could look like if it gets revamped. Again, this is just an idea. As Brian said, this is something that could embrace all the community, and that's the project guidelines. So we have been talking with Jonathan Griffin initially about it, and he suggested that we bring it to the commission. The nominations need to be turned in by April 19th, I believe, April 19th. So I have copies of the guidelines, and the paperwork to fill out, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, is very simple. It's not very hard at all to fill out. You don't have to give specific dollars amount at this time. You give concepts, you take pictures of what it's like now and what you want it to be, and explain narratively how it's going to benefit the city. So again, this is one idea, and I would ask that the commission maybe consider this. And also, if you have a better project idea, get with us, because I'd like to help Jonathan and Brian complete this application for our city.
And I'll close with this. The main purpose for us bringing it to everyone's attention in a public setting is because I brought this up with Rotary this past Tuesday. I wanted to just say that with this project, I think a united voice is going to carry a lot more weight. In a lot of these communities, I feel like there will be applications coming from multiple groups with multiple agendas. I think if we can come to a fairly unified voice, it will carry much more weight. The more applications, the better. That's one of the situations where the squeakier the wheel, the better it's going to get greased. And I think we should have a lot of success so we can kind of come to terms with something that will definitely benefit the community as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's an awesome idea. Commissioners, any comments?
I wholeheartedly agree with your closing statement. I think it's something, a unified voice coming as a fist with the synergy behind it. And I think it will be a good look for our community, being that that amphitheater is utilized frequently throughout the year. To have that there, I think it'll be something beneficial. So I wholeheartedly support it, and thank you for bringing it to us.
I too wholeheartedly support it too. I think it's going to be a centerpiece or whatever, and it's something that we dearly needed down at the riverfront, because we do have a number of events that we have annually that it would certainly be a benefit to our community. And also thank you for pouring back into your community, being part of Putnam County and pouring back into the city of Palatka. So thank you, and thank Lowe's for what you're doing for us.
Thank you.
I just want to share that I share the same sentiments as the rest of the commission, and thank you for, again, as Commissioner Borum said, pouring back into your community, and I think that will be well utilized.
Thank you. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you,
Mayor. Commissioner Jones. I think Commissioner Jones has one more comment. And so again, appreciate that. Thanks a lot, Mr. Manager, for considering the city and for definitely having that passion. And also thank you to Mr. McLean as well for being here. And so we definitely appreciate you. Commissioner Jones, you got anything else?
I said it. Ditto it, and let's get on it. Try to make it happen.
Mr. Mayor, oh, I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
So may we continue to work with Jonathan through the city manager on this?
I think you've got a super consensus at this
okay,
point.
Cool. Thank you.
Well, again, too, thanks for what you're doing for us. And a lot of times we are recipients of things, and if there's anything that we can do to help you, just let us know.
Spread the word. We'll get it out there, but spread the word. That'll be the benefit.
Thank you.
Anything, Mr. Holmes or Mr. Griffith? Okay. Thank you very much. Next up, Mr. Askew Vickers. Sir? Yes, sir. You can actually just pass it, Mr. Holmes. He'll pass it out.
Askew Vickers, 207 North 18th Street, Palatka. In front of you is a copy of invoices for water and sewer. And I was looking for an explanation or something to justify the increase of garbage for 500%, water is 150%, and I just want to know what is it that costs that much in an increase in a short period of time. The next thing, who pays the cost for police escort for funerals?
Who pays the cost?
Yes.
I guess it depends on the services that are requested.
No, okay. When a funeral is in a funeral possession, there are escorts for that. Is that free? Is that paid for?
It's typically paid for in some manner.
Yes, but does the funeral home pay for that, or do people pay for it?
Most of it's coordinated with the funeral director.
It's coordinated with the funeral director?
Yes,
so
sir.
They are paying for that.
What's your question?
The funeral director, is he paying for the funeral director? Is he paying for the escort for the police department?
He would typically coordinate with the chief of police is back there in the back. So typically it's coordinated with the police department as to what services are necessary.
Okay.
Is there a rationale or something to the question?
No, I was wondering if that was something that was given to them, or was something that was paid for.
It's typically coordinated with the police department.
Okay. Okay. On this bill here before you, the garbage at one time received, there's a thing, an invoice for 2016, a note for 2020. The garbage in 2016 was $45.50. Now it's $221. That's for the container. I was trying to figure out what's the justification for an increase of 500%.
You had you've had an increase in rate structure based upon the size of the meters. There's been adjustments throughout the course of the last 6 years and probably the last 26 years based upon certain things that are in place. The most significant change in rates came about when there was a change in the rate structure based upon the amount of days that you have garbage pickup. Are you getting, how many days a week are they picking up from your dumpster?
Sometimes I don't get any in a week. Sometimes I get once or twice a month after the recovery and requested to be done.
And so if you want to get with the rate structure, there has been a significant increase based upon certain rate structures that are in place and what your collections are.
For the garbage dumpster only is what I was talking about.
But
you're charging $221 not just for the dumpster.
Well, I pay the same thing. But if you're getting 6 or 7 days service, then the rates have been adjusted based upon that. If you've got various size meters, then the rates have also been adjusted based upon that over the course of time. And so those are all things that are there. If you actually want to get more information, you can either talk to Mr. Griffith, who's here now, who's familiar with the process as well, or you can talk to the Public Works Director, and both of them can kind of give you, they can give you a chronology of when the rate structures change, but they didn't just change in the last few months. They've changed over the last few years.
No, it went back. When I realized it changed in 2016. That's been 4 years ago.
Yes, sir. And so we're 4 years later at this point, and we're all kind of footing that.
No, see, I was closed March, April, May, June, and July, but yet I had to still pay that because I had no service whatsoever.
Because it's a monthly service bill. I get charged. I use 0 gallons of water, and I pay $130 for water. So it happens like that.
Yeah, but see, like, they can't dump anything because there's nothing to dump.
But if you don't turn your channels, they don't give you free cable either. And
I don't have free. I don't watch cable.
So your time is up at this point. If you want me to, I'll get with you, or you can get with Mr. Griffith, and we'll make sure we kind of deal with it.
I appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Anyone else here for public comment? Seeing no one else at this point.
Nothing at this time, Mayor.
There's nothing in the YouTube chat. We don't have any calls. We're going to go ahead and close public comment at this time, and we're going to move forward. I've got one item that I want to take out of order, and he's been extremely patient with this. I've got Mr. DeAndre Jones, who's on the line with us today, and he has brought forward a great grant opportunity for us, but there's a short timeline on how we can apply for this grant, and I would, in order for us to even be able to hear about it, we have to take this item as an emergency item. That grant application will call for coordination of multiple agencies coming together, and we only have a couple weeks to get that in place. So if I'll entertain a motion for us to be able to take this item as an emergency item so that we can hear.
Second.
So moved.
There's a motion on the floor in a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Mr. Jones, if you can, thank you for being here with us and for thinking of the city of Palatka.
Yes, sir. First, thank you all for allowing me to be an emergency item. Let this item be an emergency item. Really just happy to speak and bring this forth tonight. So I brought it to the mayor's attention earlier this week and been making a lot of calls to local municipalities that this grant has been made available. And before I get started, I also want to introduce myself. My name is DeAndre Jones. I'm the owner and operator of Organized Arts. We're based out of Atlanta, Georgia. So I am calling you guys from Atlanta, Georgia here. And primarily our services are public relations and marketing. We work on a plethora of public engagement campaigns throughout the South. We work with nonprofit groups mainly. So to get into the grant itself, I want to know, can I drop the link to the actual grant in the chat? Is that the best way to share it with you all?
Yeah, that's fine. Yes.
So I dropped the link that directly is the grant notice that came from the Department of Health and Human Services. And this grant was recently released a couple weeks ago. That is a part of the White House's national strategy for the COVID-19 response and pandemic preparedness. The administration has announced an investment of $250 million to localities. This is particularly for health literacy grants to particularly to outreach for racial and ethnic minority, rural and other vulnerable populations. And the specific goal of this grant is to make sure that we actually come out of this pandemic better than we came in. As our government rolls out vaccines, as we are, recovering from, this pandemic, we want to make sure that folks understand, what we're up against. We want to make sure organizations, our local public health departments are armed with the tools, the education, and the literacy to reach the folks that they need to reach. As you can imagine, with a lot of resources coming down from the federal government, this one is particularly unique. Recipients of this grant are expected to develop a disparity impact statement using local data to identify racial and ethnic minority populations at the highest risk for health disparities. So when we're thinking about this grant, we are targeting our most vulnerable folks in the community. And I think we all know tonight how bad it's been for folks, how much it's affected our workforce, how much stress it's been on the city and our public health systems and our schools. And tonight I'm thinking about those folks in Palatka who are suffering and continue to have these challenges. So with this grant, it is actually due April 20th. Unfortunately, with all good things, they are hard to get to. But there are multiple awards. Currently, there are 30 projects for urban communities available. There are also 43 projects available for rural communities. So from my understanding, from my reading of this grant, Palatka falls into the rural category for this. And there will be up to $3 million available for Palatka to utilize for the next 2 years to do this outreach. So that is the gist of it. Again, this is coming from the Department of Health and Human Services. This grant must come through a municipality. It is pretty urgent, but I think it's pretty important. I think it's an amazing opportunity for this city to come out of this pandemic, again, better than it came literally just a year ago when we came into this. So I would love for the City Commission to, really consider this, think really hard about this, commit your grant manager to look into this application. My company is also offering assistance through this process, because I know it's not hard coming up with this type of turnaround to get a grant application like this. And so I'm also offering our services free of charge to also help get this through. So I've been having calls with multiple communities about this. So this is not my first conversation. Matter of fact, today I just talked to the city of Albany, Georgia, and also Albany State University officials, and they are on board along with many other officials across the country, because they're really thinking about the impact of pandemic and how we can actually come out of this, and looking for every opportunity to take advantage of anything the government is really providing to us as a resource. So I would be happy to talk more about this maybe offline, but again, I've dropped the grant, the link to the grant in the chat box. So City Commission, I hope you guys will take this up.
And just to add to what Mr. Jones has said, we had also an opportunity to caucus with Ida Wright, who's a former dean of the School of Business at Bethune-Cookman University, who also offered to lend services as well. And she invited the idea of a partnership with Bethune-Cookman as well in order to try to push forward these items. The grant creates opportunities for us to partner with local nonprofits as well, and to be able to disseminate resources as they come in to different organizations throughout your community, so that we can make sure that we hit as many people as we can. One of the things that I can tell you that I've learned just through my bout with COVID is that there is a distinct difference in the way that information is disseminated within vulnerable communities throughout the country in various ways. And we want to make sure that we do the things necessary to make sure that people who may be considered the least of these are getting the same opportunities and the same information, the same health awareness opportunities as it relates to the vaccine as others within the community as a whole. And when you look at Palatka, our demographics, you look at our health numbers, we're the perfect community for a grant such as this, and for an opportunity to really to be able to raise the level of health within the community as a whole by providing substantial information and other opportunities that could be lasting. And so I just want to thank Mr. Jones for thinking of us again and being here with us just to present this opportunity. Are there any questions from the commission?
Yes,
from staff.
I'm sorry. I just want to thank you, Mr. Jones. Also, this is Commissioner McCaskill for having an interest in Palatka. I do have the grant pulled up and I see that it is 86 pages long, and the deadline, I immediately looked to see when the deadline is. I really don't feel comfortable right now. I don't know where this item is up for us to make a decision tonight. However, I really would like to have the opportunity to review it, the criteria and everything. I mean, everything, it sounds great, like a great idea. And I would like to have more conversation with you about that. So that's my input. And again, thank you for your interest in Palatka and presenting this opportunity for us to have.
Anybody else want to comment?
Well, I just have one comment. Is there any grant match that the city might need to be obligated to as it relates to this particular grant?
That's a great question. As far as I've written and read through that 86-page grant notice, there's no requirement for any matching whatsoever. I've also been on a call with the Department of Health and Human Services, and they did not mention of any matching funds needed from the city or any locality that applies.
Any other questions?
Can we have any questions? I don't have any questions.
And so I will say, I think that it doesn't cost anything to apply for a grant. The only thing it does is it creates an opportunity for us to be able to gain additional information and also to gain opportunity to provide what in essence could be millions of dollars in resources to this community as a whole. And I think it's just a great opportunity. I think if we delay, we're gonna miss it.
I don't have a question, but I moved to actually go ahead and seek this opportunity. We have terrific grant writers and we've been securing funds. As long as there are no matching funds that come up, I say let's, city manager.
I wanna.
That question was specifically asked about matching funds. My question is simply, what about administrative costs? Granted,
that's my question too. Thanks, Don. I was going there.
Grant administrative costs would be something that depends on who administers the grant itself. It would be something that could be built into the grant. And I've got an opportunity to read over the grant itself, and those administrative costs can be in place. And I think that with this particular grant, we don't necessarily have the staff in place to be able to administer it to the level that it is. So it would be something that administrative costs would be something that would come out of the grant itself. And we could build it into the application.
And that is articulated in the mirror. You said that we can.
Yes, yes.
And I understand that he did say that he would provide free services. Well, how much work, that's going to be required? Because look at, I know the deadline is nearing us, but how much work is that going to require of our staff? Although he's willing to offer free services.
Mr. Jones is he's no stranger to hard work. He's no stranger to the level of commitment necessary to put forth a stellar application. And he's willing, to step up to the plate because he sees the need for things such as this nature in our community.
Going back to what else? Problem with seeking grant opportunities. I mean, I'm excited about this, but just like, I know it's an emergency grant. It's right here before us. That's all my questions.
Commissioner Jones.
To finish my statement, I said about our grant writers and administrators and staff. I suggest that we have Mr. Griffin and Ms. Tucker review it. If it's something that we could do, I say let's, barring anything that's going to hamper us for meeting the deadline or something that you see that it's going to be cost intensive to us, let's go for it.
I would like to make the recommendation as well that we bring our attorney in, if that is your request, to have our Jonathan as well as Ms. Tucker. I would like to make sure that our city attorney is a part of that process as well.
Absolutely. So with time restraints, I say let's. I motion to go with those stipulations. Go for the grant.
Oh, it's anticipated that it'll be a collaborative effort. So there's a motion on the floor to move forward with the grant application. There's a second by Commissioner Borum.
I'm sorry, can I hear the motion again, please? I'm sorry.
The motion is to move forward with the grant application, to have both our staff, our grant staff, involved as well as council, so that we can move it forward. There's a second by Commissioner Bohr. Is there any further discussion on the motion?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Well, just as long as it does not interfere with what we currently have. I know our grant individuals, I don't know what their bandwidth is as it relates of shifting focus. And that would be, I guess, the determination of the city manager and the people who are currently actively working on grants, and then maybe other grants that's in the pipeline. So I'm not sure as to what the bandwidth is, but that's my question.
So is anyone here to elaborate on that part? I want to go forward with this, and I'm totally excited, but I just want to know about that as well. Jonathan, Mandy, or anybody here that can kind of do that?
Commissioners, I'll admit I did not have a chance to read the grant document. I know Ms. Tucker did, but I can speak to what you refer to as the bandwidth, or what I would say the capacity of staff to administer additional grants. We did budget this year for a city engineer to separate the responsibilities associated with project management and construction administration. We are interviewing 2 candidates here pretty soon that should help. But if it is possible to have administrative costs reimbursed within this grant, we'll probably be looking at bringing on part-time staff or additional consultants to help to affect the grant if awarded.
Any other questions?
Wasn't there a commitment from what you spoke of Bethune-Cookman University?
And that's in line with what Mr. Griffith just said. That creates the same type of opportunity. We see this, and I'll just say, as far as this grant's concerned, I see this as an opportunity to create collaborative relationships. And at the end of the day, our staff is stretched thin as it relates to where we are. And they do grant applications across the gamut. And there are opportunities for us to create partnerships with experts in the areas of health and experts in the areas of public relations to be able to do certain things. And I think that this creates really it's kind of the perfect storm for us, because we can actually create various partnerships with local organizations as well as other organizations and universities to be able to meet the health needs of our community. And I think it's kind of a no-brainer. And so this is where we are. Any other questions as it relates? Any other discussions on this motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Jones. And what I'll do is I'll put you in touch with our staff as well as our council so that we can start to move forward and build the team.
Yes, sir. I thank you, Mayor, and thank the commission for taking this up. You all won't regret it. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Okay. Thank you very much. Next up, we'll move to our consent agenda. Our consent agenda has items A through E. We're going to pull item A and bring it back at a later date. So we'll be considering today items B through E. Are there any other items on the consent agenda that you wish to have removed at this time?
B. I would like to be moved also, please.
Are there any items other than item B?
I see that we have Ms. Sharon Williams on. So I would like, once we get to that point, if they would like to say anything about the reappointment, if approved.
Okay. And so is there a motion as to item C, D, and E?
Motion to approve item, you mean motion to approve item C and D and
E?
No, see it. We're approving item C and D.
There's no discussion for E. I just made a recommendation.
So will we motion to approve item C, D, and E?
See, well, you was pulling. Somebody was pulling that.
He wasn't pulling.
I pulled B.
Okay, well, motion to approve items C through E.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor, second by Commissioner Jones. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
Questions called. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. As it relates to item E, Sharon Williams is on the phone with us. She is on Zoom with us right now. I don't see Dr. Evans on the phone as well. So Ms. Williams, we want to congratulate you for another term with the Palatka Housing Authority. And we look forward to you serving. And we want to just thank you for the work that you've done, and also for coming in and stepping in during Mr. Futch's end of his term as well.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams, and congratulations, and again, for your second term.
I'd just like to say thank you to all the commissioners. I'm looking forward to continuing serving on Palatka Housing Authority board and learning more and servicing the community as needed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And also thank you to Dr. Evans, who's been chairman on many occasions, as well as a longstanding member of the Palatka Housing Authority. And so we want to thank him also. Next up is item B. 5B was adoption of resolution number 2021 R31, adopting guidelines for coding reduction requests. Commissioner McCaskill, I'm sorry. Commissioner McCaskill.
Yes, my question was, I know in the last meeting that Commissioner Jones and Commissioner Borum had some specific questions as it related to this. And I know that we had Mr. Holmes had given us, staff had given us a set of guidelines that we could use. In the last meeting, there were some questions from Commissioner Jones and Commissioner Borum, and they were given direction, or all of us was given direction to provide a written statement by that Thursday. I hadn't seen any of those requests or written requests attached to this, and I just wanted to make sure that before we move forward with this, that we had their recommendations, or if we're going to go ahead and go what we had the last time and have Mrs. Thomas or something give some input. I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention.
My understanding is that the input that was given by the commission was incorporated into the final document that's before us today in the agenda. And maybe Ms. Thomas or Mr. Holmes, if you want to respond to that, you're welcome to as well. Ms. Thomas.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, the suggestions that were submitted by the commission at the last meeting, I did include them in numbers. Could you move it down some, like 10, 11, and 12? And then the last two, I think that is number 18. Sonny, can you roll it down a little bit towards the bottom? Okay, 18 and 19. I included those in those bullet points. I sent to each of the commissioners, each of you, my proposed changes, and see whether you had any input or any additional information that you wanted me to add.
Okay. So pardon me, I missed that I think you may have sent it to my city email, which I hadn't had access to lately, and I've been using a different one. So that's why. So I apologize to everyone.
Oh, I apologize to you, Commissioner. I did not know that. I will get your correct email and make sure I have that in the future.
Okay, thank you so much. With that being said, I really, I'm fine with it. I do remember writing down some suggestions on the last one, and if that's what you included, I'm all good with that. So thank you all so much.
Mr. Holmes, any additional input? Okay. You've heard from council, and as it pertains to this issue, is there anything else before the commission as it relates to item 5B? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to accept item 5B.
Second.
We'll take Commissioner McCaskill's motion to accept item 5B with a second from Commissioner Borum. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. It's only like 20 seconds behind us. So again, I want to just thank council and Mr. Holmes for the work that you did in putting that together. I think you also collaborated with Mr. Griffith and also Mr. Cutright on those issues as well. And so we want to thank staff for the work that you did in providing at least some form of clarity as it relates to code enforcement liens. And so I think it gives us a framework to kind of build off of as time goes on. And in the world of codes, we're always going to end up with a unique situation that calls for us to readjust at some point. So again, I'm just thankful for us to continue to move that forward. Moving on to our regular business. Item number 6 on the agenda is consideration of possible certification of the Palatka Housing Authority's annual 5-year plan for 2020 through 2025. And so at this point, I've got PHA on the line. Dr. Woods, are you available?
Yes, sir, I am. And it's actually 2021 through 2022. It's just an annual plan. The 5-year plan was approved on last year.
Okay, you can proceed at this time, and then I'll let Mr. Holmes go.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry. I think it was labeled by PHA as a 5-year plan, but in correspondence that I received from HUD, they indicated that it was incorrectly labeled and that it should have been labeled as a 1-year plan. So based upon what being stated now, this apparently is an annual plan, and the 5-year plan, according to HUD, was approved, or a form was executed in January of 2020 as to the 5-year plan. So the annual plan then, the only plan document that we received is in your agenda. It was provided to staff with a request that staff review it before providing it to the commission. The commission request, or the request to the commission, is that the commission certify the plan. That's pursuant to a federal regulation that the plan is to be certified by state or local officials as consistent with what the federal regulations can term a consolidated plan of the jurisdiction. So that's federal terminology. The closest thing we would have to a consolidated plan would be a comprehensive plan. And so the way we view this is from a consistency with the adopted comprehensive plan. In other words, is this plan consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan of the city of Palatka? And if so, then it was to be certified as such, and if not, then not. When it was submitted to staff, I requested that it be reviewed by Finance Department, Planning and Zoning, General Services, myself, and Legal. And each of those departments gave a comment back to me. I then essentially incorporated or summarized those comments in a document that I forwarded to all of you back in January. We noted issues or concerns that we had for your consideration without comment as to whether they were fatal in terms of your consideration of the plan. There have not been modifications to the plan since that time, with the exception that what I understood to be a proposal that the water bills that are currently paid in a consolidated fashion by PHA were going to be broken out and billed to the individual tenants. And I understand that that proposal is no longer, or at least not at this time, on the table, with the exception of that, which is mentioned in the summary. And the reason I mention it now is because it is mentioned in the summary, and I want to indicate that that concern at this point is apparently not on the table. With the exception of that, I'm not aware of any changes that would address the items that are in the summary. probably the biggest issue that staff raised or concern that staff raised was the fact that the plan indicates that there was going to be actually what the plan indicates in paragraph B3 is that PHA had submitted an application under the Rental Assistance Demonstration Program, and is actively engaged in negotiating a master development agreement for conversion of 422 affordable public housing units under RAD, et cetera, et cetera. And our question, concern, or inquiry was there was really no explanation in the document as to what that would consist of. And there has not been any, to my knowledge, any additional information submitted, at least not any kind of an amendment. So if there, since there's not any additional information being submitted, and I don't know of being planned to, I've agendaed this item for your consideration. It is a policy decision for the commission to make, not for staff to make, as to whether or not you find the plan to be consistent, or the annual plan, as it's now being termed by PHA, to be consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. And so we put it on your agenda for your consideration.
Dr. Woods.
Yes, sir.
Comment?
Certainly, as is required, it is a standard requirement by the federal government during our submission of our annual and our 5-year plan that we submit to the city and our municipality for approval of its consistency, in our case, with the city's comprehensive plan. As would be desired to be able to provide any information specific to what the absolute resolve would be for the disposition of our inventory in its entirety, we are unable to do that until such time as we have in place a master development agreement, in place the comprehensive public hearings that are required to ensure that our property's sustainability for 20+ years would either, one, deem to remain in place, as was discussed exhaustively during a number of meetings, and or two, be demoed, disposed, and or redeveloped. The only addition that we have, and I think we recently, the mayor and I recently discussed, was fair cloth units. As far as any other disposition within our inventory, that won't be determined until such time as we go in and do the necessary environmentals and all exhaustive measures that take place. It is nothing that takes place within a day or 2, 3 to 5 years even, but it is required that we forecast the agency's intent. RAD is a tool that HUD has placed in Housing Authority's hands to be able to extend longevity of its assets. And that is why we have opted as an agency to indulge, as was discussed in a number of meetings with a lot of officials, both within the city, within the agency, and within the community at large. But as it is right now, that is a requirement. And, you know, this process began October of last year. Our drop dead submission date for the agency is January 16th. We were compliant with that by remitting our plan on December 15th, minus the necessary and or needed certification, of course. But here we are today, that it is on the agenda. And it has not changed from last year's approval to present date as it pertains to the agency's annual plan. That annual plan for today and this year falls within the 5-year plan that was previously approved on last year, which means that from 20 through 2024, everything that will be remitted, barring any unusual or extraordinary occurrences and or situational changes relative to our resources of funding, should be consistent with what was remitted in the 5-year plan.
Well, look, I'll be the first to tell you that I've got, I guess that articulation that you just put forth, I'll be the first to tell you that I totally disagree with what you just stated, because what you brought forth initially is far different than what we have now. You were not speaking of using a tool in a toolbox. You were speaking of actually putting a hammer and nail together and nailing this down. It's changed over the course of time. And my biggest concern initially was that once we got the first submission from you, it included documentation from 2016. And we asked for corrections to those documents. We didn't want it to be piecemeal. I sat in a number of meetings where at some point I just got tired of wasting my time and sitting in there because I needed clerical stuff to be put in place in the proper manner so that we could deal with it. Staff was given specific instructions. I talked to the city manager and specifically asked that the submission given by the housing authority be consistent with what was in the written document. There are multiple places where that wasn't the case. From the standpoint of having outdated documents in place. I don't know if it's cut and paste or some error that was put in place from that standpoint, to the point that when we started talking specifically about minutes in particular places where there were public hearings to be put in place, the minutes were not consistent with having talked about the subject matter that was in there. And so I have concern of my own as it relates to the substance of what's being put in that document and whether there's compliance with those things as it relates to public meetings. And many of those public hearings that you were saying you had, there may be one resident or 3 residents, and you were talking more about mold than you were about the particular subject matter that was supposed to be adhered to within the running document. And so those are places where I saw things. What I did from that point was, once Commissioner Jones, who was your chair at the beginning of this whole process, once Commissioner Jones became the liaison for the city commission, I bowed out and let Commissioner Jones become involved with the housing authority in the process. But there was a point where the housing authority said they didn't even need the city for the purposes of approving the document. And then the next thing I saw was an email communication which says that we were holding up your process and that it was imperative that this thing be taken care of by April. Because if the conversation that you don't need us takes place and you're going to go deal with this in Washington, D.C., then I don't even know why it's on our agenda. And so somewhere along the line, something's changed. And if you're going to move to a position where you're looking to change the manner in which you have 422 units or your 62 Faircloth units, at some point, you've got to give us some information that lets us know whether your plan is going to comply with the comprehensive plan, which is the immediate standard of what you have in place. That's the piece that I haven't received back yet. And if I haven't received that piece back, there's no way that I can comfortably sign off on this thing, regardless of what goes on. Now, I understand, and I'm not sure, but I understand that your RFP was rescinded because you didn't, I guess it wasn't finalized, the agreement wasn't finalized or whatever the circumstances are. And so I don't know if you guys are putting that back out on the street or what the case is. But if within this 12-month period, there's going to be any type of development within the city of Palatka or any attempt at development within the city of Palatka, at some point, you've got to answer the question as to whether this complies with our comprehensive plan, which is consistent with the foundations of what's in place with this agreement. If you continually shift the pendulum, you can't ask us to be able to answer the questions or to be able to approve the document because the document is fluid. And that's the big issue. Just give us the basics of what we need so that we can move forward. But we wouldn't be doing this dance since October if the music stayed the same.
Well, I'm not cognizant of any statements that were remotely made. And I heard a reference made by the city manager that the agency was not in need of the city's approval. That did not come from my office nor myself. As far as what the agency intends to do as far as development, the city will be there every step of the way. There is no ifs and ands about that. And certainly the requirement to be compliant with the city's comprehensive plan, that is not only standardized by the plan in and of itself, but that is the very nature of the housing authority's existence.
Yeah, I understand. I guess that's why I've been perplexed for 6 months.
And I think if I may, Mayor, I think we did get some type of reply as to what you were saying to corroborate what you were saying about us holding up the process. If I'm not mistaken, I thought that email did come from the director, and I may be wrong. I don't have that before me right now. And then speaking about the public hearings, I do see where, as the mayor said, that there were meetings held with residents, but it was particularly talking about mold and it was everything was included in what was said in the meetings, but still there was no follow-up with that. So that's just my input on that. I'm kind of on the same page with the mayor, and that's all I have to say at this point.
I believe the reference to public hearings are being conflated with our residential meetings. Public hearings are not to take place until such time as development and or the accompaniment of MDA and or master development is in place. What we were having were resident meetings. Resident meetings did indeed cover a number of topics. And certainly mold may have very well been, but it probably was listed as mildew. But as far as our RAD intent and relocation and or the whole 9, that would have also been part of the public discussion during our residential meetings. But resident meetings are not equated to public hearings.
Okay, and I do see
a different process.
I do see where you do have a notice of a public hearing here on December 14th, and did have those conversations with the residents during that time. There is no elaboration on it, no input or anything. And it seems as if it was, I'm not saying that it wasn't brought up at the time, but it seemed as if some of the residents would have gave input on that. And if they did, I just don't see the documentation. I'm going on the documentation that was provided and what was discussed in the meetings.
Any other comments or any input, Mr. Holmes? Or
I defer to Commissioner Jones if he wishes to speak. Otherwise, I can make a brief comment. Mr. Mayor, it is not and was not my intent to become adversarial in this process, but only to get information and follow directions the staff was given regarding the plan. All I have to review is what's written in front of us. I don't have anything beyond that. So for instance, with regard to the notes of the meetings, there's the plan itself, the document itself asks, did the RAB, Resident Advisory Board, provide comments to the PHA plan, not to other aspects of PHA life, but to the plan? And it says yes, and there's a narrative attached. So those are the comments that we referenced in my summary, in which there are some PHA residents present, some PHA staff present, but the plan is not discussed. Instead, maintenance issues, mold, windows, cleaning, and that sort of thing are discussed. And so we just noted that in the summary. And the same with the fact that the plan document itself, the plan itself, the document itself, the form is outdated. It states on its face that it expired on February 29, 2016. We noted that in the summary. And I think, as a matter of fact, that council contacted the PHA and they indicated they had a letter that indicated that this was the current form, even though it didn't bear the current date. And that letter from HUD was attached, but it's not. And so all we did was note those discrepancies. And then from there, of course, we did note the absence of any information about how the 420 units would be replaced. So if there's a question from that perspective, it was simply a matter of the staff reading what we saw and noting inconsistencies, and that's all.
Was there ever a point when the Housing Authority indicated to the city that they didn't need our approval?
Yes, sir. Well, the statement was made by Dr. Wood that he really, and there were witnesses in the room when the conversation took place, that he really didn't care whether we approved it or not. He just needed the city to vote on it, up or down. And that was the statement. So we were at that.
I did not make that statement. You asserted that it had been said that someone or I had said that. I did not comment. I did not affirm or deny. and never made that statement.
You're okay because you're not under oath.
Mayor, may I ask the question?
I'm always under oath, sir. The God I serve always has me under oath.
My question would be, when it seems like a lot of hearsay here, I don't know, but Dr. Woods, when you heard these statements, at what point or what actions did you take to reach out to city, to anyone at the city manager or anyone, to sit down and kind of get some of these this information straightened so that we won't have these communication issues. And when Mr. Holmes provided these summaries, were you aware of this?
No, I was not made aware of the summary until well after a Friday meeting that was held with a number of representatives from the city, and my board chair, my current board chair, as well as my CFO were on the line. There were a lot of misrepresentations, a lot of misstatements, even though there was written documentation and video documentation to support my position with regards to what had transpired. Communications, I believe fervently in speaking and communicating effectively, that is seemingly not possible with the city manager, because any and everything that is stated is either misinterpreted intentionally or misstated and misrepeated intentionally. And so no, it's not a matter of being adversarial. I have since met with at least one city commissioner stating the agency's need to have its annual plan certifications attached to its annual plan that was remitted back in December. But that's I've spoken with the mayor on a number of occasions. He reverted me back to, and redirected me back to the city manager.
Until you
there's nothing more than miscommunication.
I do have one more question. Misinterpretations. I do have one more question. So when you realized, and you all were in those meetings, and you realized that there was some misinterpretation or miscommunication, at what point, aside of that meeting or after that meeting, did you make efforts to contact the city manager to get together with the city manager and council to try to get this information corrected?
I had not tried to contact council. I had made additional attempts to contact and communicate. It was in the office there, his office. I think within 2 weeks after that, the whole city hall had shut down for about 2 weeks or so. We met again next month, and that was the meeting that I was sharing with you.
You're breaking up.
He's breaking up really bad. I can't understand.
To everyone, all parties being involved on the line, reporting documentations, and
Commissioner Jones.
I'll defer to you.
City manager, mayor, commission. The issue that I have with the PHA in this plan, it's a multi-million-dollar plan that they don't have in this this 1 year, 2 year plan, or rather it's 5 year plan. I know it's absent of the 5 year plan. I have a problem with transparency, okay? These meetings that have been going on with the residents is the only ones I have witnessed or attended, have a lack of participation. I don't know if it was lack of notice to the public. I know that we haven't had a thorough meeting with the city and the stakeholders that are involved publicly. And when I say stakeholders, I don't mean investors. I mean people who it's going to affect in the communities that this project is going to be in their neighborhood. There's several issues that I have, or questions, whether you do this after you get a master development agreement or now. And I would like for the questions to be answered now about a plan that we have 433 or 22 current units there with PHA. What happened, or how do we house these people that will be displaced when this transformation goes on? We don't have housing now in the city of Palatka. So tell me, those are questions that have to be asked, because we're gonna have to deal with it being the commission in the city of Palatka. So that was a main concern that Dr. Woods failed to give me an answer to on numerous occasions when I asked about it. So the transparency part is part I have a real concern with. The lack of compliance with us, where these projects don't coincide with our comp plan. And like you said, City Manager, Mr. Holmes, the fluid actions that he take at one time or another. And, you know, we ask for some summary and didn't really get the same summary as we got the first time, and the cut and paste it. I have a problem with that because it appears that there was no fresh information given and nothing to answer the questions that our city attorney, the city manager had, as well as the mayor. So, pardon me? So those are my concerns. So, and I do recall that this plan does not have to be approved by us. I do recall the CEO and President Woods said that about the city. We do not, with or without our approval, his plan could be submitted.
I can see Mr. Hayes' hand raised his hand twice.
Who? Mr. Larry Hayes, Director Hayes.
Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and commissioners. I apologize. I couldn't find a feature to raise my hand to answer a question, but as I've been here attending your meeting, I wanted to listen in and try to see what information has been shared and if the field office can be of help at this point. So I'm just want to state that, but I don't want to interject into the meeting unless invited. But I wanted to just let you know I'm here if you need to ask a question. That's it.
All right. Appreciate you. Thank you, sir, for being here.
Okay.
And I guess to go off of the information that I've heard, my biggest concern again is the consistency of the information that's brought forward, the truthfulness of the information contained there in that document based upon the information that's attached to it to justify what's in place. We've got to approve this document in its entirety, not in a fragmented format. And at the end of the day, when I get conversation that says one thing and a document that says something different, it gives me concern. And the crux of this whole thing is what our authority is to determine if this document complies with our comp plan. A very simple process that shouldn't take 6 months to get done, but it does if things change and if the assertions continually change. And I wholeheartedly believe that until there's complete truthfulness in the things that are brought forward to this commission, that we won't deal with it. And the other part of it is outside of that, is form over substance. If the format is flawed, then how can you expect us to go through this document? And I've said it continuously to both the chair and to the CEO of PHA. Give me a clean document which complies with the standards so that we can have the ability to do a real evaluation of whether this complies with our comp plan. But when you give us RAD and you're saying that you're gonna do this and there's an exception and it's not gonna, James A. Long and Northside Home, James A. Long and Ragsdale are gonna be excluded from the plan, and it's a 5-year plan, which now restricts into a 1-year plan, and then that plan changes, but it's the plan from 16. There's no way that anybody can approve it without those things being in place. So you have communication with staff who gives you a written document as to what the concerns are, and yet they're not addressed. And then you say, well, I don't need you. We can go to DC without you. But then I guess you left DC and came back to Palatka. And so whether that's through Zoom or whatever the process was, but we find ourselves back in the same place. And now the city is being accused of being the holdup. We're not the holdup. We've done nothing but try to be an ally to the housing authority. I stand by it. I say it consistently. PHA is one of the most important entities within this community. You have the ability to change lives in a way that no other organization can. But we've got to all work on the same team and put the same jerseys on. And if we continually start creating this us against them mentality, it's not going to work. And until you give us what you're required to give us in a clean format, where all the boxes get checked off and we can sit and evaluate it and say that this does or does not comply with our comprehensive plan, then you tie our hands. And that's just where I am. I won't do all the double talking that a whole bunch of folks may do to be politically correct. I just want to be open and honest that it has not been in a format that should be acceptable by any agency that has the skill set that your agency has. And so until it gets to that point, I don't even know how it made it to the docket other than the fact that I think folks just got tired of dealing with it. It should have never made it to this agenda when it was in a flawed format. And it's changed so much that I'm confused now, and it's hard to get me confused.
Mr. Mayor, is it okay if I interject here? And
yes, sir.
Let me share something from HUD's perspective. As we look at the 5-year plan, the 5-year plan, which was a 2020 plan, was reviewed by the city. It was signed off. It was given a certification. This is how RAD starts. There in the initial plan, you would either put a notice that the rental assistance demonstration program is going to be sought after at some time in the future. And you put that in plan, it goes to public notice. That was done in the 2020 plan. It will never be spelled out until there are a large gamut of, let's say, hoops and hurdles that HUD requires going forward. In the next year, Dr. Woods they submitted a plan which was mislabeled. It was inadvertently labeled as a 5-year plan. And we, HUD, my office was not present for the meetings that took place. When we reviewed the plan was mislabeled. We identified it. It is structurally sound, but it was mislabeled. We corrected and had those corrections done, but the certification that was there from the year before is the one that has to be there every year. So let me kind of explain the mere fact of what happens in RAD. RAD is a very complicated process, but it starts out with the PHA being, at this point, Palatka Housing Authority, makes a decision to take their old housing stock and to reinvent that stock with something that is going to not only enhance the lives of the tenants that are in it, but enhance the actual community. So the housing authority will come to HUD and will ask us at the field office, this is what we are considering to do. And then they now have to start meeting with different pieces of the puzzle. Part of that information is getting an environmental review. That takes a piece of it. Part of it is going out to public notice. And I've heard several comments about public notice. There are public notices, but for RAD, they are RAD specific. They are, once you have a plan, you have gone out. Part of it is you have to go and procure a partner because now you're entering into a business relationship. That procurement has to take place. That's down the line. So when that starts to take place, there are public notices, there's sealed bids, those things all come together. This is well down the line, but the first piece of it starts with communication. The communication to HUD is the annual plan. The 5-year plan starts it, and then you're right, it's the certification. The certification is whether it's a consolidated plan, if you're an entitlement community, or it's a comprehensive plan, those things come together, but it is where the housing authority and the local community come together and share what mutually, you wouldn't build something in Palatka that didn't fit what the community feels like. So it has to feel right. So you start talking about, we're thinking about doing it, and you put it together. So there are a number of hearings that have to take place. RAD will not take place tomorrow. RAD may not take place unless there are grants, whether you can demo, dispo, what existing property you have. That has to go through from an environmental standpoint, which my office will look for your community. The city will take on and say, we're going to look at a phase 1 engineering study at some point down the line, and then sign off and say the RAD project can move forward because it's environmentally safe to tear down these buildings and put new buildings up. I would then get a document called a 7015-615, and I'll sign off granting the process to move forward. It then leaves my office and goes to Chicago to the Special Application Center called the SAC. The SAC can look at it and say, are the units that are there, are they obsolete, or will this be better? And I don't want to be long-winded. I'm trying to give a picture of how detailed RAD is. RAD is such a detailed process. The Housing Authority can't decide to just do a project. They have to bring the project, make sure it's comprehensively sound, and then they have to come through with HUD, and it has to make sense, even to the fact that the rents that are there have to make sense. It has to be feasible for low and extremely low income families to be able to stay in the development. And I heard, I believe it's Commissioner Jones stated, what would happen to the tenants that are there? Once HUD approves that this is a sound project, everything is there and is financially fit, then another part of our of the department would issue what are called tenant protection vouchers, assuring that every person who is in public housing receives a voucher to go have safe, clean, decent, affordable housing until the project is built. And after the project is built, they then have first right of refusal or to come back into the development. There are so many protections that not only my office, but the entire department work on to make sure that RAD doesn't turn into just a profit-making funding source for the Housing Authority. It turns into something that ensures that the community continues to have a housing stock that's there. So I'm here today just to see if there's something that HUD can do to assist. But we don't get into the day-to-day business. We don't tell housing authorities, and we definitely don't interject into city business. I just want to share some information on what I've just shared is probably a tenth of what would be a telephone book of information that would have to be ahead of trying to do a RAD project. But the first part is we have to have a plan that meets the certificate, that meets all of the requirements so that we can move forward, and it keeps the funding stream continue to the Housing Authority. It's not just a document that we just look at and push aside. It tells us the story. And after we get that story, then we can say, you've met this piece, you can move to the next piece. But it is a pivotal piece for the Housing Authority. So I don't want to feel like, and I hope I'm not sounding like I'm interjecting into the business. I just want to provide some, from HUD's perspective, what is ahead if RAD at some point does happen. RAD is not a guarantee. RAD is an option that has to be vetted out even before it can move forward. So I appreciate you allowing me to speak.
We appreciate you and for you giving us that bit of insight as it relates to RAD. My issue again is the fact that when the document tells the story, that the document tells the same story every time it's presented. And if the story keeps changing, then that's a problem. And that's why we're here 6 months after inception. And so, and that's just where we are. Again, I think that the things that we requested were very simple, things that should have only taken a short period of time to either correct, amend, or put us in a position where we could move forward. And, you know, we're 6 months later and we're still talking like this thing happened yesterday. And that's where my big issue is, because the concerns that were raised, the minor concerns that were raised, have still not been satisfied. And that's where my issue comes in. You can't trust a relationship if you can't trust candor. And at the end of the day, I just think that there's a great opportunity for this community to move forward. And PHA is going to be a catalyst to that. And what I look for is for the conversations to be clear and consistent. And if we can do those things, then we don't have to have these long conversations about a simple document to make sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. And to sit in this meeting and to waste all these precious resources that are in here today on something that's clerical makes absolutely no sense to me. And I'm not going to beat around the bush, because I think time is precious. And the more we waste time, the more it puts us in a position of frustration. And the only thing I want is just for this document to do what his mouth says. And with the two of them lined up, then we're good. But you can't tell me it's raining outside and the sun's shining when I go there. And that's just my whole thing. And so staff was given a task. They fulfilled their task. And it's very simple, form over substance. And it's just a matter of making sure that the information that we're given is consistent with what box he checks off, that PHA checks off. And that's all we want. We've had an opportunity as a commission to sit in during the RFP process and watch the interviews of the two responders with the RAD program. I've had an opportunity to go tour sites in Daytona where RAD projects were put in place. I think we got a pretty sufficient tutorial as it relates to RAD from Dr. Woods with the site visits, as well as some of the other things that were put in place, the additional conversations, but also from external resources that also provided information. It's not our position to try to deter anything, because that's not what we're trying to do. I actually think if the program is successful, it becomes a tremendous catalyst for us overall, because we're talking about putting hundreds of millions of dollars of property back on the tax rolls. That's not my issue. My issue is that if you submit a plan that we're supposed to look at, and we've got two criteria that we evaluate, that you give us a clean document so that we can do our job, and that's it. And that's all we've been asking for the entire time. And what we get is confusion through inconsistent statements. And typically when you're talking to three lawyers in the room, I think there's a great chance that three lawyers are going to remember what's being said. And so, and that's where it comes up. I get people every day who tell me I didn't say it and it's on an email, but I just won't present that email. So we'll just go from there and we'll try to move forward. Anything else at this point? So we're here. This plan is before us. Mr. Hayes, what's the drop dead date on approval of this plan? I understand there was a January date. Has there been an extension by HUD as it relates to this plan?
No, sir. There are no extensions when it comes to PHA plans itself. There is a date. The plan has to be in my office to be reviewed. That was statutorily met back in January. We reviewed it, sent it back for correction and for certifications. The plan has to be approved by my office, reviewed, approved with certifications no later than April 1. April 1 is the actual date that the plan becomes insufficient.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And what are the implications if the plan is approved? If the plan is denied, what's the impacts?
Mr. Mayor, was that
if the 1 year plan is denied, what are the impacts?
At that point, the housing authority becomes out of compliance. My office, I would then be talking with the regional administrator and more likely the deputy administrator, the deputy assistant secretary, and there will probably be a penalty that will come off of funding because the funding streams there. At this time, we just finished doing funding for what's called Operation Subsidy, which is the money that is paid to housing authorities to manage their properties. You also have Capital Fund, which is a fund that is there for capital improvements, whether it's roof, new doors, new appliances, things along those lines. I don't make those decisions. My job is to try to make sure that things stay on track in the field office. But money has been appropriated by Congress, and then that money comes to the department, but it comes with statutory guidelines that have to be met. So if the plan doesn't meet the April 1, then I'll have to speak with senior leadership, and then the discussion will go from there.
And can the plan be approved with certain, subject to certain corrections being put in place?
As far as, let me make sure I'm understanding. The correction, as the plan speaks right now, what we have reviewed is sufficient. That's the thing I can say. The corrections that you want, being the city of Palatka, may want from the housing authority, the housing authority can do an amendment. There is a process where amendments take place. If the language in the document needs further clarification, that clarification can take place. It would then go back out to public notice, allowing the public to review the changes in the plan. So the annual plan here then can go back for a significant amendment. That's a possibility. It's not a requirement that we would make because we reviewed the plan as it stands. So we reviewed the 5-year and then what's going on for this year. But if the city and the housing authority, if there's language that needs to be adjusted, then at that time, then that could be an amendment or a significant amendment, depending on what is discussed in that plan. So that is a possibility there. But HUD wouldn't put us, I'm sorry?
But if that happens, the agency considers them to be in compliance still.
The agency would be in compliance if we receive a certification today, it would be in compliance and then does an amendment at a later date, whether it's a month from now or 2 months from now, does a new plan. It's just a significant amendment. And then that plan comes to the office with certification to be, it then replaces this document that's coming, that's being placed in the system now.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any discussion from the commission?
Mr. Hayes.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. I keep going out of your meeting. Not to be distracted. I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
No problem. This is Commissioner Jones again.
Yes.
You mentioned about, when I mentioned about displaced residents, and you said that vouchers will be issued to every displaced person. But,
yes.
But just I want to make it clear that vouchers don't equate to a house or a place to live. So you can issue vouchers, and sometimes people have vouchers, but no one to present those vouchers to that have a place for them to live. Is that right or no? In our area, because we had this situation once before with our high-rise building on the 100 block in Palatka, and we lost a lot of residents because they didn't have any housing. We had 100 units, and we only rebuilt a portion of those units. And so the question was, what happened to those residents that were there just and was given vouchers and never found nowhere else to stay? They end up being without a house. So that is a concern. It's a major concern.
And Commissioner Jones, that is a concern. That's why HUD has a team on multiple sides. It's a 360 approach. In the city of Daytona, Daytona is going to relocate in stages 300 residents over in Malley and Windsor, the property that's right on the shoreline. There's a relocation plan that has to be in place when you're relocating tenants of a public housing authority. It's not just a plan to hand a voucher, it's a plan that has to have feasibility. That's generally done out of Atlanta, but there has to be a real plan in place to make sure and ensure that every tenant is provided housing and with at least amount of disturbance to their life and their lifestyle. So I can't guarantee you what that plan will look like because it's not handled by my office. But what I can guarantee you is that going through the RAD process is that those are some of the things that make a project either a go or a no-go.
One of the key things that I think it should be stated, Mr. Hayes, is that RAD, as the former board chair knows, requires that no family is displaced. Requires that no family is displaced. One of the reasons the agency was pursuing the recompense of its fair clock units was to ensure that we had property on hand in our inventory to move residents to at phases to ensure that any redevelopment that may need to take place, we had somewhere to send and bring our residents to. Because Mr. Jones is absolutely correct. A voucher does not equate to a residence. But we know that, and we knew that going into our whole discussion regarding RAD in its entirety. First and foremost, it prohibits displacement of any family. Secondly, the agency had fair clock units, which would then lend itself to be a transitional housing, albeit temporary, for any existing residents that we could transfer to. So I think it needs to be understood that RAD does not allow for displacement of any residents.
Well, it does not. Being that I don't know how many around remember urban renewal, RAD is not urban renewal. RAD is not a plan without an ending. There has to be a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that's the difference in RAD, is that HUD has learned from the past and is trying to help build new communities that can sustain, because the amount of cash or the amount of funding coming from HUD for public housing is dwindling. The housing stock is just getting older too fast to maintain enough funding to come through. We were fortunate in the bill that was just passed to get $5 billion for emergency vouchers, which is incredible. These vouchers will be funded for not the next 9 years to hopefully protect families that are going to be displaced. But unfortunately, we don't have enough public housing, and the public housing that we have, it's not sustainable. So RAD is one of the tools to help communities stay vibrant and to give our citizens the best chance at a life in not just decent, but very decent and affordable place to raise their families and to become a community that's thriving. Right? That's what it's about. And for us, we're trying our best to do what we can for our portfolio. And we hope, and we hope that we continue to do that. I can tell you, I've never had a plan not meet the statutory deadline. I haven't.
We've never had a plan in this not be submitted in this format. So we're both at our first.
Yes, sir.
Any comments? Any other comments from the commission at this point? Seeing none.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, ma'am. Council, you're breaking up.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you hear me? I just have one question. Mr. Hayes said that they amended the plan that the PHA initially submitted. Have we received the amended plan from that HUD amended and submitted back to the PHA?
It was a correction. The plan was submitted. I'm sorry, ma'am, Ms. Thomas, or your commissioner. I'm not sure. I can just see your name, but the plan was submitted.
City Attorney.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Attorney Thomas, the plan was submitted improperly. When I say improperly, it was misstated. There's only one 5-year plan. That's for, and everyone had a 5-year plan on 2020. The plan that was submitted in 21 should have just been submitted as an annual plan. That's all. So
okay,
we sent
so that was the only correction that that the Jacksonville HUD office made, was whether it was a 5-year or an annual plan?
It was a 5-year plan. It was not a 5-year plan, but an annual plan. So that correction, it was missing the certification itself. And if there was anything else that was there, again, I don't review the plans, my team reviews them. But to my understanding, that was it. I understand that there are some questions about what was in the plan, but the plan follows the guidelines that the previous plan, the 5-year plan that was approved by the city in 2020, has the same information that follows through in 21. But the RAD piece is different. The RAD piece is just an element that's talked about. Then it gets expanded upon as it starts to get developed. And I think maybe there's, I'm not saying there's a loss of translation, but there's, when I'm hearing public hearings and discussions, there's a public hearing when there's a document presented to HUD. That's the plan. But RAD's actual plan, that's different because that is a specific set of meetings that talks about this is what we're considering, this is how you will be affected, these are the things you need to know, and these are the comments. And then they have to gather, being the houses, right, have to gather that information for HUD to review. And that's a series of meetings, not just.
So you're advising the commission tonight that the only issues that HUD had with the plan submitted by the PHA was the title and the missing certification. Is that correct?
Yes, certification, title, dates. It seems minor, but it really isn't, because
no, I'm just making sure that we understand. I just want to make sure that the commissioners understand that that's what you said the issues were with the plan that was submitted, yes, that was amended. Thank you.
Correct. Thank you.
Mr. Holmes, do you have anything else?
I won't say anything else.
Anything else from the commission?
Well, I'm still confused. It sounds like it's they have everything that HUD needs to move forward, and for us, it's just making sure that they provide a complete application for the development for the 1-year plan that we're approving for right now, that we've already approved the 5-year plan in 2020, correct?
We have approved the 5-year plan in 2020, yes. But I guess the only thing I would say is a true and correct plan, 1-year plan.
So what will we need in terms of the amendment that they need to make to the application to clear up anything that the city would need so that we can make a better informed decision? Because is there something that we need to look at once they, or we can approve what we currently have with the amendments?
Do you have that email list that they were provided, the list they were provided with the corrections?
I have a summary
that outlines all of the, so it's basically the corrections needed for us are outlined. Is the concerns are in the summary.
May I ask, is that was what Mr. Holmes referred to that he asked for back in January?
The summary was provided back in January 12, 2021. And then there were subsequent conversations, but the summary, the concerns raised in the summary remain unaddressed, with the exception of, as I said, the summary does reference the fact that a representative of PHA, whose name I won't call, went to PGA and told them to be prepared to make individual billings to about 440 units on April 1st. That is noted in my summary. Subsequently, I'm told that that was just a thought, that it wasn't really intended to be an actual plan. But other than that, the other concerns that are raised in the summary have not been addressed. And from what I'm hearing, it doesn't matter. And that's what I had asked up front. Does it matter? I mean, are we being asked to look at this, but it doesn't really matter what we say? For instance, when it says that the plan, it has been discussed with the residents, which it does say. And again, all my training is to look at what I see and interpret it the way it's written. And when it says resident advisory board comments, did the RAB provide comments to the PHA plan? To the PHA plan, that's at C.3, and that's checked yes. If yes, comments must be submitted by the PHA as an attachment. So I look at the attachment, just pick one of them. It's in the packet that you have, and it says residents concerned, Madison Court -AMP 11. First bullet point is annual plan meeting was held on 11/10/20 at 11 a.m. in the community room. Overall, the residents are fine with where they are and how the apartments are being maintained. Is that what you call a plan meeting? And then it says a list was taken for those that want a Thanksgiving Day dinner on 11/24/20. Is that an annual plan meeting where you discuss what the agency's next year plan is? When I looked at it, I didn't think so. And then it says maintenance concern, apartment B17 has a mold issue. A resident was told that there is probably too much moisture in the air. Mr. Hobbs is looking into finding a product that will help control the mold. 2, shower and bathroom sink has a slow flow. B108 has a mold issue. The resident was told to use a baking soda paste to put on the mold and crack a window when showering. I'm sorry, but when I looked at that with my training as a lawyer, I didn't see that as an annual plan discussion with the agencies, with the residents being an opportunity to provide input and comment as to what the PHA's plan was, whether it be 1 year or 5. And so that represents an example of the concerns that we put in the summary. Now, if that doesn't matter, if you just have to put something in there and call it a plan meeting, then so be it. I mean, as I said, I'm not never set myself up as the arbiter of what this plan is supposed to say. So with that in mind, the summary states the concerns of Mr. Commissioner. And if those concerns are irrelevant, then so be it. As a matter of fact, I even called HUD to find out, are we wasting our time? Is my staff wasting its time in going through this document? Most of the exhibits of which are not properly labeled. They don't correspond to what's in the plan. Again, my training, your exhibits relate to points that are in the plan. And so I called HUD and said, if it doesn't really matter, if we're just supposed to rubber stamp this, then just tell me and we'll stop spending time on it. You know, and I said I wasn't going to, but Dr. Woods seems to have a plan of his own, and that is his best defense is to attack me personally, which I have not done him yet. But if, you know, in terms of his statements about misrepresentations and miscommunication, all I can say, I wasn't the only one that heard the statement that I mentioned. I'm not even sure how relevant that statement is at this point. But again, it has not been and is not my intent to try to create an adversarial relationship with the Housing Authority. I was simply doing what I was told to do.
Commissioner McCaskill, point of clarification, I never received that plan from the city. That response, that summary.
And when you realize that, and my question again is that when you realize all this miscommunication was going on, what actions did you take as a director? And just to piggyback off what Mr. Holmes just pointed out, I understand that those were residential meetings that you were talking about, that you all held. And that's what I was able to look at and kind of talk about what was presented to me. And if you all did talk about the plan at that time, I just find it hard to believe that none of the residents elaborated on it. That's what I was referring to, what I saw. And then one of the concerns, one of the things that also concerned me is that there are the Ragsdale community was so large, huge, but not one resident attended the meeting. And Mr. Commissioner Jones did kind of hint on that, the meetings were not well attended. We don't know if it was of how it was advertised or put out to the residents, but that's just kind of, I don't want to prolong this meeting, but just kind of saying what Mr. Holmes has talked about is what I was referring to. And what actions did you take as a director when you realized that all of this was happening, that there was some misrepresentation and miscommunication? So thank you. And did you make efforts to reach out to Mr. Holmes and the attorney, when you realized that this was happening?
The meetings that I mentioned earlier are the references and attempts that I made. As far as resident attendance of meetings, that does vary, and it varies large and wide, but that is customary within our communities nationwide.
Any other comments? We're at a point where I think this horse is dead, so we can stop beating him. I'll entertain a motion or additional discussion.
I move that we lean on the advice of our attorney and our city manager, and what was requested. Until we get what was requested, we don't approve the certification.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Questions called. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So, Mr. Hayes.
Yes, sir.
Would you be able to provide us with maybe a contact number for your field office so that we can speak to you again?
Yes, I'll give you my personal cell. My HUD cell phone number is 202. We're not working in the field office right now.
Okay.
Number is 202
okay.
631 4245.
641?
No. 202 631 4245.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Moving the agenda forward at this time. And I guess I'll, as we deal with that, I guess the question to the commission is if PHA gets with staff and they're able to come to some resolution with the commission, is the commission going to be willing to come back to deal specifically with this issue?
It depends on when, Mayor.
Well, we got to do it before April 1st, if at all possible. If they can remedy the anomalies before April 1, which I don't know what it would take for them to amount of time that it would take for them to get that done. But if they can do it expeditiously, I'll be willing to come back to the table.
We'll address it as it comes, Commissioner.
Yeah, I have no problem with that either. This is Commissioner McCaskill.
I'm going on vacation next week.
Well,
understandable.
We'll address it as it comes. We'll make our best attempt. So let's move the agenda forward at this time. Again, thank you, Mr. Hayes and Dr. Woods. Moving the agenda forward at this time, we'll go to adopt resolution 2021 R33, supporting Bartram Trail Conference, approving the City of Palaka's affiliate membership, appointing a member of the City Commission as a representative, and authorizing the Bartram Trail Conference organization's use of the city seal. Mr. Carr, you can come forward at this time. Thank you for your patience.
The purpose of this this affiliation is just that to establish communication between Barton Trail Conference and Barton Trail Society of Florida.
Mr. Carr, I'm being told your microphone's not on.
Mash the button right there on your mic. Is it lit up?
That's good. And it's to establish an affiliation between the city of Palatka, because this is really where the Barton Trail in Florida started. And all we've had St. Augustine already become an affiliate, and so we're expecting Jacksonville and all to do the same. But we thought that really y'all should have been the first to do this, but that's what we're doing. Basically what the affiliation is an agreement that the city of Palatka will support the Barton Trail Conference in the effort to become a national recreation trail, which would obviously be beneficial for Palatka as far as ecotourism and so forth. And then what Barton Trail Conference will provide to Palatka is all of the information as we have to build the Barton Trail. We're having a symposium here April the 18th during the St. John's River Barton Frolic that will be largely run by the Barton Trail Conference, and we'll have people from all over the country coming in to see and hear that. So it's just a relationship between the city and Barton Trail Conference. And we would advertise you on our websites and so forth as an affiliate, as the other 15 affiliates that are currently on there.
Okay. And everyone's had an opportunity to review the resolution as it relates. Are there any concerns from council or city manager? Nothing from council is here nodding their head. Any questions or concerns from the commission? Seeing none, I entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor and a second by Commissioner McCaskill. Any further discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And so again, congratulations, and we appreciate all that you do.
Really appreciate it. Thank you very much. I want to extend the invitation. Our VIP frolic will be Friday night, 15th, I believe it is, at the River Center. So we'll get you invitations to all that good stuff. All right.
Appreciate you. Thanks a lot. Thanks to both of you gentlemen.
Sonny has something. There's a question. What commissioner is being designated as the representative?
We haven't said at this point. Is there a volunteer?
Second.
Wait a minute. I'll accept it. I'll take it.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Commissioner Campbell's the designee. And Commissioner, I'll spell you if necessary, because I usually attend as well. We all do. Moving forward, direction on reopening and issuance of special events permits. Mr. Holmes.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Hopefully, Eddie, is Mr. Cutright still on the Zoom call? There he is. Good. So we have a number of, we have a large interest in several events coming up in the very near future. Of course, we have the Wolfson Bass Tournament coming up. We have other events, including a parade, a number of events that Mr. Cutright could mention more specifically. And we wanted to get more direction from the commission as to the commission's desires regarding reopening. And with that, Mr. Cutright, do you mind mentioning some of the specific ones that have basically been applied for or that you've been made aware of?
Yes, I have no problem. In April, we have the Bartram Frolic, which Sam just talked to you about. The first weekend in May, we have the Mud Race. And then we have the Legion, American Legions want to do the Memorial Day Parade. And then PYP want to do a mixer at the end of the month, I think May the 29th. Most of these going to be Category A's. So they're going to be large events. So we need y'all approval or y'all guidance to whether we're going to try to reopen the city to these things. Everyone has submitted a decent COVID-19 measure plan, and everything is in place so far from the special event meeting that we had with most of them. Now we're just waiting on approval from the commission or the city manager.
I need guidance from the commission because obviously there are people, it appears that some jurisdictions are opening up fairly widely. We saw, though, in Miami in the last week that there were some issues with opening up without restrictions. Did Wilson's not submit an application?
Yes, Wilson is May the 12th. I mean, May the 13th through the 15th. They're 3 days, 3-day event.
So you know, Wilson's traditionally has as many as 400 boats, 500 boats, with all the attendant. I don't know that they will this year, but traditionally they have had, and there's attendant to that are the parking of the boats, which you know means people running boaters, trailer truck drivers back and forth from where the boats park. There are going to be some crowds down at the waterfront. I'm not sure what they're proposing right now, but traditionally they do have at least a weigh-in down there. And then, as he indicated, you have at least one parade, correct?
Yes, Memorial Day Parade.
I'm sorry, Memorial Day Parade, and then the frolics. So, Mr. Mayor, we need some direction from the commission as to policy at this point.
Commissioner Campbell. So, go ahead.
I think I think at some point we have to take the steps in order to try. And of course, we don't want to try at the sake or at the, I guess, the hand of others getting sick, possibly. But I do believe that we've had events recently that they, that we had events. But I mean, I think it's something that we really have to take in consideration. I would like to see us move forward, but I would like to see us move forward in the most safe way possible. Of course, we won't be able to wholeheartedly determine the numbers, but again, I think it's something, sitting on this dais that we have to literally take in consideration. I am very much aware of what transpired in Miami. I was actually tagged quite a lot of times in those particular posts on social media. But again, as a commission, we have a duty to look at all of our citizens and not just some. So again, this is a tough conversation, a hard conversation, but it's something that we have to have it so that we can move forward in some kind of way.
You need to come in from the commission.
Yeah, so they've submitted the plan. I mean, we still have somewhat of controls in place as it relates to that. And if they have submitted the plans and I guess if staff has looked at it and approved the plan based on what we put in place already, we're not saying we're wide open, but if we could continue to move into this thing with some controls in place as best we can, I think those are the steps we need to continue moving forward. It looked like things has flattened for the most part, and from looking at the numbers, I haven't seen a major increase in anything as it relates to COVID numbers going up or additional deaths in the county. So other areas are opening up, but I do think if we have a plan, we need to strongly consider moving forward with those plans in place.
Any other comments from the commission? Commissioner McCaskill, you have anything?
Commissioner McCaskill has left the meeting.
What?
Well, in all due respect, she was feeling very badly, and at one point wasn't even going to try to attend by Zoom, and she made the effort to. So,
listen, I understand. So, maybe Commissioner Jones, you got anything?
Only when we consider these, and it's for no particular group, I think we should consider and actually have that data in front of us as far as the numbers, have things flattened out, how it's affecting our community itself, maybe from the Department of Health or whatever. How it's going to impact our people that have to enforce whatever compliance or controls. When you mention controls, I mean, are there any additional? Are we going to review these applications on case-by-case basis or what? Because you can't, we can't just say it as a whole, yeah, we're going to open up, because there are other dynamics to each event, okay? So, and I know if the city manager already looked at it and the attorney, and then they come back and say, okay, but we need you guys guidance on this. There are probably some concerns. So I want to just say that even with our law enforcement officers, they're going to have to take part in some of this stuff. We're going to have coverage. So, you know, so not only just the participants that's going to be there, they're going to be obligated to be there. So, you know, so it can impact us as a city like it did when we had here in our building. But no particular group, but I think we need to look at it case-by-case basis and actually have intricate details. So that's all I want to say.
And I'll mention one thing if I could. The quandary we face is this. With a bass tournament, for instance, if there's a limited number of boats, like there was with Bassmasters Elite, and they put in, which I think started with 100 and narrowed down to 10 over the 3 or 4 days, and they put in place fencing to limit the crowd, and they put in seating that's in pods of 2 and 4, and they limit the number of attendees to the number that would fit within concentric or 6-foot circles. Well, there's, you know, that's a fairly set of restrictive controls. But with a parade, when we look at a parade permit, I don't know how you do anything with a parade permit to put in controls. I mean, I don't know. Maybe somebody's got some good ideas somewhere, but I don't know how you restrict attendance. I don't know how you restrict points of access. I don't know how you restrict anything. And then, for instance, with Wolfson's, as I said, Bassmasters was 100 boats. I believe it was. I think it started with 100. And then I think the Road Average tournament was 140 boats, everything under 150 so far that I'm aware of. But there's a big difference between 150 and 450 boats.
200 at the high school tournament.
Sir? 200
at the high school tournament, I think.
Okay, 200 at the high school tournament. But even so, there's a difference between 200 and 450.
And 500.
So that's our quandary is we could tell Wolfson's, for instance, we need you to limit the number of boats and the crowds, but then that's going to affect their ability to raise money. And we all know this is a money raising event for Wolfson. And I know everybody, it's hard to say that that's not a good event. So that's why we're in the quandary that we're in. We just don't think it's a decision staff should make without guidance.
Commissioner Borum, you got something?
Well, I think Commissioner Jones made a good point, but again, like I said earlier, the staff will review those plans that's in place. And again, I wouldn't recommending that we just go wide open in terms of just saying, okay, let's move forward. I did state that we need to the submitting plans, and we review those plans and act accordingly to those controls that's in place.
I would also, if it's proper, have some input from our law enforcement, our chief of police, because these are public events, and what your thoughts are on them. If you could come up, chief, and you have your thoughts. You're the captain, either one.
We'll need EMS too, the fire department as well with these type of events. Right, through the application process.
If I'm not mistaken,
you guys have already reviewed these?
That is correct. We have our special events committee that goes over each event application to ensure that all those things are put in, safety precautions, before we even bring them to our city manager or we bring them to the commission. So each application is reviewed individually and looked at to see if the crowd size, if the event has the proper safety precautions. And Mr. Cutright has been doing a fabulous job since taking over that course of meetings to make sure that those things are either presented or that those things are on the application before moving forward.
Sure. Go ahead, Commissioner Jones.
So I was just asking with your opinion. That's good to know. And because this meeting is being broadcast, I wanted to get your opinion and get you on record saying, how do you feel about it? As far as, I know that the committee, but your personal, as far as your personnel, and how do you guys feel about going on?
Well, our stance on, depending on what the event is and the size of the event, albeit large crowds right now and capability of our staff is something that we don't anticipate or view having to control with certain standards. Again, looking at the event or looking at any event individually and what's been put in place basically lets us know how we're going to address it, how we'll approach it, and if it's something that we can handle. But when we think, and as mentioned earlier, the events in Miami, when you think towards things like that and having to be able to address it with staff, it is a concern of ours. And we go into, and we sit on the special events committee as well. Captain Williams is charged with doing that, but we go into every meeting looking at what the possibility and how it may affect not only local citizens, but from the safety aspect. So we address it from that standpoint.
So out of the events that have, okay, thank you, sir.
Before I make another comment, come on, Mr. Parsons, I'll let you go ahead.
David Parsons, 1113 Lee Street. I'm a board member with the Palatka Young Professionals, so I'm representing our group today. We did just, we recognize, there is still, cause to be cautious. So as the organizers for the last Blue Crab Festival, we don't want to do that now. We recognize that for May, that's a little soon. A 3-day event, 4-day event, that's a lot. But so what we would like to try is a 1-day, just Saturday, most of the day, spread out along the riverfront. We'd have bands throughout the day, but we can also, we've planned for hand washing stations regularly, sanitizing stations, and then we'll also pass out masks. But we do know, it's not the time for, 100,000 people event. So we're, straying away from the classic Blue Crab Festival name, which would draw people from everywhere, all communities. So one day we've talked about calling it the Palatka Wine Mixer. It's there's a movie that it's kind of modeled after. It's just a good time, farmers market for people that could come walk through and shop local vendors, just some food, some music, real small, we're not going to try to, overload on advertising and draw people from everywhere. We know we don't want that, but we do, we would like to try something and see if we can, get things moving along and see, what is the community response? What are people looking to do? So that'd be our comment. Thank you.
I guess I've been quiet on this one. I guess my biggest fear has always been the overflow of Category A events coming in at one time. I don't want us to be like Atlanta. There's a comment saying that that COVID wasn't in Atlanta during All-Star Weekend. I think for many of us in haste to get back to some sense of normalcy and have things in place, we're planning large events so that we can get people out. Even the county fair and some of these other things that were not necessarily in place before. we all need to look at what the numbers say. And there's a feel that COVID's flattening, but it's not. If you look at the data, and I just pulled up some of the numbers, in December, there were 62 to 66 deaths around the middle of the month. As of yesterday, there were 133 deaths in this county. And, you know, there's so many people that subscribe to the fact that COVID deaths may not necessarily be reported accurately. But even if we put a coefficient of error in there, that's a lot of people. One person is too many. And death is real. Within the last few weeks, we've had days of 49 cases reported. We've had mostly days of 4 to 10 cases reported. Part of the reason is that people aren't really having those conversations. They're tired of having the COVID conversation. I think the other part of it is people are becoming complacent, which leads to the numbers doing what they're doing. I don't think Tallahassee's done a great job of ever having Florida closed. You know, Florida and Georgia have been the destinations for everything. And we continually fail folks from a health perspective. I think the other piece of it is 50% of our seniors, based upon the numbers, have been vaccinated. But it does not give cause for us to relax to the point that we start to have everything we had before March of last year. I believe fishing tournaments are far different than a festival, simply because the weigh-ins don't necessarily bring that same level of crowd. And in those situations, we're mandating that there's masking as they sit and watch that. The boaters are required to remain in their boats until they come up for weigh-in, and their distance from where they are. It's typically only 2 people in a boat and maybe a marshal. Those situations are far different. When we start saying a festival and we believe that a certain number of people may come, there's gonna be a gang of folks coming just because they haven't had anything to do in 18 months. And so we have to be careful of how we approach these things. I think the only way you can approach it is on a case-by-case basis. But I'm personally resistant to us opening up category A's from a festival or parade standpoint to the extent that we make thousands of people susceptible to getting the virus for the sake of them having something to do. You know, I just think it's too soon. I think we're increasing vaccinations and getting more information out and trying to make attempts to educate folks. But we still have people within our own staff on a regular basis who are resistant to getting vaccines or doing other things. And it's just a hard call. But I think the answer is, part of it is to trust staff, but I think the other part is to phase this thing in continuously. I don't think the answer is for us to say, oh, we're gonna allow this category A and not this other. Because if we do that, then we're saying it's okay to have blue crab and bring 100,000 people in here. And I'm pretty sure 100,000 people are gonna come in here. I think the answer is for us to look at how we can limit the number of people that we have in these events, create maximums, and try to enforce that to some degree. But the reality of it is once you take the lid off, it's hard. You're not going to be able to control it. And a fishing tournament is far different than a festival. I continually say that. So I don't know what's the safeguard. How do you control in a festival the number of people who show up that you never anticipated because they don't have anything to do? You know, we can say mandatory masking, but what happens when they don't comply? Because the governor has now preempted us from any enforcement. You don't have any controls in place. And I'm not saying that and directing it towards anybody. It's a question that has to be answered in order for us to deal with safety perspectives, particularly since we're the county that typically ranks in the last 2 or 3 counties statewide for health. And so we've got higher rates of pre-existing conditions than most people throughout this state. And so we've got to be extra cautious because many of our citizens are vulnerable. And so as we begin to make these decisions, I just caution everybody to just make sure that we understand that sometimes the path to destruction is paved with good intentions. And while we want to do something good for the community, it could be disastrous. And the precautions have to be in place. And so I can't say I'm in any way in favor of us opening up major category A's outside of fishing tournaments, and fishing is far different than festivals. Anybody else?
My statement in the opening was to have this dialogue so that citizens know where we stand. Not in any way, again, am I pro having these events. Again, we sit on this dais and we have to make some decisions. And sometimes our decisions may not come easy, and the decisions that we make may come, or we may become under scrutiny. But again, we have to have that honest dialogue. But again, moving forward, I don't see this being any different from, if we're gonna do case-by-case basis, which I'm perfectly fine with, we still have to determine how we proceed forth, because you spoke of the fishing tournament, but we also approved the Bartram Trail to do something as well. So again, we want to make sure that when we go moving forward, that there is a consistency when staff brings something to us that we go by. Again, I'm not totally in favor with opening wide up, but again, we have to have some form of consistency when these type of events or any event come before us that we go by.
Anybody else?
And I would say if we need to, because it is, again, something that we have to take in consideration. And how do we move forward? But if this is something that we need to sit down and this be our sole focus, that may be something that we need to do as well.
Again, I'm going back to my original statement, which I said I think we really need to look at the, again, it's basically going back to say case-by-case basis in the short version of it. But again, I said that the special events coordinator, city manager, staff, they review those applications and they're making sure that the proper protocols and measures are put in place before I think they just sending it to the commission to make a decision. And based on their recommendation, things are put in place. They put them before us so that we can help give them more guidance. We're in a place where we need to at least look and see what we have, and if certain ones can be approved and others can't be, well, that's what it is. But again, they're putting those controls in place, and I think we need to look at them again. They're all case by case.
Just think about the beginning of the conversation where the city manager stated that he needed direction. So I feel that we're putting it back on him or back on staff when they came to us for direction.
We have to do it. And at the end of the day, it's not fair to put this on staff. This is what we're elected to do. And I think it's absolutely right. It's a difficult decision. And I don't even know if there's a right answer. So what's your question?
Well, we'll go with.
No, you're doing good. You're on task. You're on task. It's almost 9. You're perfect.
I'll just say, okay, well, we'll just continue to not have Class A events and continue with up to Class B with still the controls in place.
But we've had Class A.
We've already had Class A events. I think the problem, and that's my thought process. But I think, I mean, quite honestly, there is no right formula, because at the end of the day, we're not gonna know. I think logically, the only thing you can do in this situation is take everything on a case-by-case basis and evaluate the safety plans as they come in. There's probably not going to be any event that's going to make me happy at this point, because I'm going to be scared of all of them, you know, and my personal experiences kind of lend to that. And I just think that we all should kind of keep ourselves out of harm's way. But there's a gang of folks who want to get out and do different things, and it's going to be different. But I think we have to I think the answer is just to approach it on a case-by-case basis. And the same way we review as opposed to putting these things on the consent agenda, we review them with a fine-tooth comb to see if they comply, and they're scored from that checklist of things that we have in that strategy as it relates to complete reopening. You know, I can't say I'm in favor of that. You know, even when you look at City Hall, we're still closed in City Hall. Every other governmental agency is open, and so, you know, it still protects us to an extent.
Well, Mayor, for sake of, I think we all kind of echo on the same thing in one way or another. So I would make the form of a motion that we would continue to review these specific events case by case, working towards a checklist that was actually given or provided to us a while back on several occasions that Mr. Cutright came up with, and actually took back some of our overall concerns with that document. At this time, that we, again, just go by case basis.
Second.
It's a motion on the floor. A second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Motion passes 3-1. What's your vote? Motion passes 3-1. So, we'll just continually review. So that's where we are. All right. Moving forward. Thank you a lot, Mr. Parsons.
You need to say what you want to say.
City manager and administrative reports at this time. Mr. Holmes, you got anything?
Out of respect for the lateness of the hour, Mr. Mayor, I save my comments.
Anything pressing from staff at this point? I see there's only a couple folks still with us. Mr. Cutright.
I just have one question. You said that for these events to be reviewed case by case, do we need to send them to you directly with the measures in place so we can get an idea of which ones you're going to approve? Or how do...
Continue on with your process. You've got a list in place, and it still has to come before the commission if it meets. Only category A's have to come before us. And so those are the ones that are going to be of most concern.
Okay.
And so if the category A's are coming forward to us, then then those approvals are going to be in place. If it's a smaller event, then the safeguards just have to be met.
Track it.
And if there's anything that creates angst, then it's still an opportunity to have that conversation with the commission through the city manager. Commissioner Jones, you got anything? So I think that's where we are. Anything else? Mr. Cutright?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
Chief Taylor? Mr. Griffith is no longer on that. So I saw him. Is there anything else? Chief, you got something?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to thank Chaplain Mulberry for coming down and meeting with the staff for the past couple of days. It was a great time getting to meet him, and I was glad he got to talk with some of my staff.
Okay.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Chief. Anyone else on here? Those are all our participants thus far. Ms. Krantz, you have anything for us?
Not this time, thank you.
Council, you got something for us?
No, sir. Thank you.
Commissioner Borum.
Just real brief. The Northeast Florida Legal Cities did send out a couple of the checks to the to Epicure, one to Epicure, and also one to North Point Youth. We had 24 cities participating. They had about $16,000 in the pot. So that was distributed between all 24 cities at 2 entries apiece. So they got like $332 per dispersion, but in each city can submit 2 501(c)(3)s. So those funding seemed like they came in and they arrived at least North Point Youth. I got some feedback from them. So that's all I have.
Chief?
Just wanted to let the commission know, I received a phone call yesterday from Chief Dixon wanting to say thank you to the commission, to the city for the proclamation and the letter that accompanied it. So I did want to pass along those words.
And the word we got from Chief Dixon was that the folks in Miami really enjoyed the fact that Palatka recognized him, that his hometown recognized him, and then speaking to him, he was overwhelmed. So definitely a great thing. Any Chief Commissioner Jones?
I just would like to ask this question. And it's going back to what we just voted on. So just to be clear, we're where we were anyway, prior to this meeting, right?
Correct.
That satisfy you, City Manager? Because I don't think that did. And I don't want to leave here like that.
Well, what I'm going to interpret that as meaning is that if we can institute safeguards in terms of limiting numbers and access, then we're going to go forward with it. And if we can't, then we're not, but where there's time, we'll bring the decision before the commission. Unfortunately, on some of these, I don't know there's going to be time, like Bartram Frolics. I think that's already, I don't know about the timing of it.
It's next month, April the 15th.
I thought we already approved Bartram Frolic.
Well, you agreed to help sponsor it, but the permit, I think, is in front of Eddie, so we're going to approve it now. But you know, so we're going to approach it in that basis. If there's time, we're going to bring it in front of him. If there's not, then we're going to try to apply those standards of if we can limit numbers and enforce safeguards, then we'll try. And if not, then we're going to say no.
Did Bartram submit a category A?
Eddie, is that a category A?
It was a category B with measures. I don't have right in front of me with the numbers, but it was a category B. So you within the realms of what you decided to do tonight, commissioners. But what Mr. Holm is saying, I just need some guidance. I mean, because we getting hit every day with different events asking to be done, and we said put measures in place. We give them to put measures in place. I'm with you. I understand the COVID. I feel the need to be cautious, but we got to have some definitive guidance somewhere.
But even outside of this, it still has to come to the commission, and it's still, when you essentially look at it, is a case-by-case basis. Only thing you're doing is collecting the information, going over the checklist. If that is provided to you and you feel that it's in the event, it still has to come to the commission, and we still have a right to turn it down. So it's still essentially a case-by-case basis. And I think what's listed on the agenda is a reevaluation, as we have been doing along the way. Since March of last year, we have been reevaluating several things. But again, ultimately, collecting the information, providing the commission with the information is essentially still the same thing as bringing it to us on a case-by-case basis.
We're going to do our best.
And I would like to just add that when we decide that we're going to have these events, I think we should also follow suit with servicing the community and our citizens as far as opening up City Hall, opening up the gas authority. So all of those things are going to follow suit. So we can't say, well, we're going to have a festival, but you guys still can't come into City Hall.
And that's an interesting point, because scheduled for discussion on the Gas Authority's board meeting this coming Thursday is whether or not to open up their lobby. on days right after the billings, they're averaging about 75 people coming in person to pay bills and or ask about billings and billing questions. So to this point, they've been using a drive-in process. And I know that some of you know firsthand that it has stacked up traffic. And so they've asked about opening up the gas authority lobby. They have a very limited number of staff. They have only 4 people in the lobby, and you know their interaction with the people, the office staff and the folks in the field, their interaction is fairly constant. So if COVID gets in that place, it's going to be like City Hall. They're basically going to be shut down.
And I think the only good thing about the gas authority opening back up is that they actually have a barrier already in place, and it's been there beforehand. But I mean, the reality of it is it's no different than the police department. They've got a barrier, but at the end of the day, people are going to still be susceptible.
Well, what we had talked about doing was opening back up effective the end of the month and taking the autoclave down there at the end of the days during the first week of the month when they have their peak numbers of people inside. Some of their people are getting vaccinated. They voluntarily, matter of fact, some of them already did, have had the first vaccination. So we were looking at discussing safeguards for the gas authority because they understand that there are people who are waiting in line and getting disgruntled and they want to open back up. So, and as far as City Hall goes, we're letting people in, as you know. Anybody that comes to the front door, we're letting in. We're just not. You have to go to the front door and knock, but we're not refusing people.
So, as if we were taking a vote tonight, which I thought we were going to do, my vote was going to be to open. I just want to let you know.
You had the ability to do that at the time of the call question, and we did take a vote. You just didn't exercise your right during that vote.
Commissioner Campbell, we did not.
We did. There was a motion. If you disagreed with what the motion was, you had the opportunity to state it at that present time. So we did take a vote.
Well, thank you for that clarification, Commissioner Campbell.
So let's do this. For the sake of, on the next, as we get direction at our next meeting, we don't have a meeting on the 8th, right? Do we have
you have a workshop on the 8th. Now you have a workshop on your status of the city, your goals and objectives. You have a workshop.
Okay. At our next meeting, place on the agenda direction again. We'll revisit the same thing as we have already committed to doing.
All right.
And any issues that the commission wants to bring forward as it relates to COVID, we'll address them at that point, so that everybody has an opportunity to really get into the meat and bones of it. If I was at church, I'd be saying the hour is far spent. Anything else, Commissioner Borum? I'm sorry, Commissioner Campbell. Commissioner Borum, you got anything?
Nothing else.
I'm going to save mine until the end of the month. So we'll stand adjourned.